going to hit record, and you guys should get a little pop-up that asks for permission. So I think you have to agree to it or click on it or do something to make that little pop-up go away. Again, we'll talk about what we do with class recordings in just a second. So let's do some introductions. You probably have had some contact with Miss Lane. She's the owner and director of our school. You got an email from her, I know, because you got in this class. So you have her email address already, and then her phone number if you need it. Reach out to Lane, anything school related. She's the one that can help you with anything school related. And then my name is Julie, and I'm going to be your instructor for the next couple months. So here's my phone number and email, and I do want all of you to write it down. You guys have a brand new notebook dedicated just to this class. See, I love that. I know you guys. So you can go ahead on the inside cover of your brand new notebook. That way you always know where it is. I know my email's long, but it really does make sense, doesn't it? Because who am I? I am Julie, the real estate instructor at gmail.com. So if you can remember that, then you can remember my email pretty easily. I encourage you guys to reach out to me. I never want you guys to have unanswered questions. So if you don't get to ask it in class, if I don't get to answer it in class, that doesn't mean I don't want to hear from you guys outside of class. Please, please, please don't go through any struggles alone. This is why I'm here. While you guys are jotting that down, I'll tell you a brief history about myself. You're going to spend the next couple months learning all about me. I'll tell you that. So last year, I actually just celebrated 20 years in real estate. So I've been at it for quite a while. I started as an administrator. So I was kind of the behind the scenes person that made the wheels go round. And over time, I made the transition into sales and eventually teaching. Today, I wear two hats. There's the sales me. I'm affiliated with a real estate firm in Winston-Salem. And then there's the instructor me. So depending on the day, depending on the hour of day is what I'm doing. As we said in the introductions, I do live in Archdale, South High Point. Love it down here. Just moved down here a couple of years ago. And I love Archdale, I got to tell you. But my office is in Winston, so I kind of get the best of the triad. I'm all over the place. Winston, Archdale, anywhere in between. Everybody have my name and number? Everybody good? I hope to hear from you. As a matter of fact, I will hear from all of you in just a bit. We'll talk about that. So we're going to spend some time talking about why we're here. As a matter of fact, we're going to spend the next 2 months talking about why we're here. So I want to first talk about why we're not here. Let's get that out of the way. I am not here to teach you guys how to be successful real estate agents. I'm not here to teach you how to be top producers. I'm not here to teach you how to conduct an open house. That's not my job. My job is to get you guys the foundation of your career. My job is to give you guys the law and the rule, the basics, so you can be successful. No matter what avenue you're going into, is it residential sales? Is it property management? Is it commercial? No matter where you're heading, I tell you, you need more education once you get your license. And we'll talk about that process in just a second. This is just the foundation. This is the very beginning, step 101. I always feel like my job has two purposes. Purpose number one is to help you guys get your license. Again, I'll talk about that process in just a second. My second purpose is to keep you guys out of trouble once you are licensed. So having that strong foundation, the understanding of the laws and the rules that revolve around this industry is why we're here. I can see you guys, so if you will, put your hand up. Any of you ever bought or sold a home before? Have you ever bought or sold a home before? Keep your hand up. Has anybody ever leased or rented a home, a property before? So most of us have had some kind of experience in real estate as the consumer, is what I'm seeing. I need you guys to do me a favor. Take that personal experience and put it off to the side for the next 2 months. Your tests, your exams are not going to be on your personal experience. I'm not going to stand here and tell you if your real estate agent was right or wrong. That's not my job. I also know that there are two sides to every story. So if you put your personal experience off to the side and focus on the pre-licensing material, the information you need, I guarantee you, as soon as you start comparing, you start to get confused. So everybody good with that? All your personal stories. But this one time I bought a house, put it off to the side. It's not going to help you pass your test. By show of hands again, where are my HGTV fans? Where are you? Come on. Turn it off. That stuff is not real. If you really want to help yourself for the next couple months, turn it off. You can watch it all you want to once you're licensed. What was the analogy I heard the other day that I loved? It's like saying you want to go to law school after watching Legally Blonde. It's kind of the same thing, right? I tell you all this to help you guys get in pre-licensing mode, okay, to get into the realm of pre-licensing and get you guys focused. Again, there's two objectives: get you through your exam to get your license and help keep you out of trouble once you do have your license. Are they expanding off it? Other people are picking it up now too, aren't they? You get real estate shows everywhere you go. Any questions so far? So far, so good. I like thumbs up. That's one good way for you guys to tell me you're here and paying attention. Thumbs up. I will work with a thumbs down, but I prefer a thumbs up. We do have an attendance requirement in this class. Actually, we don't. We're here by the governing body of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. I'll talk about them in just a bit. But the North Carolina Real Estate Commission has put an attendance requirement on us. They say in order for you to be eligible to take the end of course exam, you have to be here 80% of the time. This is a 75-hour course, which means you cannot miss more than 15 hours. 15 hours is the max. Why don't you guys write that down? 15 hours is the max, the most you can miss, regardless of the reason. There is no excusable absence. Did you get sick? Did your family get sick? Did you lose internet? Did you lose power? Jury duty? I've heard some good ones. Gallbladder surgery? Yeah, I've had some good ones. And unfortunately, there is no excusable absence. In order for you to be counted present, I need you on camera at all times. I'll give you a break. We'll talk about breaks in just a second. Please try to not max out your time. Guys, I'm telling you, if you're missing 10 hours, you've missed a lot. One thing I know about this class, and one thing I can tell you, we cover a lot of information in a short amount of time. Have you guys gotten this thing yet? Have you lifted it? It's like a little weight, isn't it? I mean, it's crazy. And we're going through it cover to cover. There's not much we're not going to go over in this class. So we move pretty quickly. And if you're missing time, you're missing information. Now, I told you a few minutes ago that I record. Oh, good. I told you a few minutes ago that I record. One thing that I will do before class on Thursday is I'm going to create us a YouTube channel. And every class we have, I'm going to put today's recording in our YouTube channel. So if you miss something, you have the recording. You can go back and catch it up. If you leave class and say, what in the heck was Julie talking about? You have the recording. You can go back and go through it at your own pace. So when we come together on Thursday, I'll provide you with our YouTube channel. That does not negate the attendance requirement. 80%, 15 hours, regardless of the reason. I get life happens. I get it. And so does the Real Estate Commission. That's why they allow you 15 hours if necessary. If you come on the call late, say you come on 15 minutes late, I'll only deduct you 15 minutes. If you have to leave early, I'll only deduct you that time. If you miss the whole class, you miss 4 hours. Questions on attendance. I never have questions on day one. It's always when you're about 14 and a half hours that all the questions come up. But any questions on day one? 15 hours. Y'all jot that down? 15 hours. Okay. So things changed rapidly, actually, about 2 years ago today, wasn't it? Our whole lives were picked up, shooken upside down, and altered. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest, one of the most difficult things about us moving pre-licensing from in the classroom to on Zoom are the distractions at home. Can we all agree there's a lot going on at home? Let's just get this out in the open. There's a lot going on at home, isn't there? You may have kids, you may have other family members, you may have pets, you have a TV, you have this thing, you have your phone. I'm sure the dishwasher needs unloaded, laundry needs to be done. You guys with me? There's a lot going on at home. And one thing I need all of you to do is to devote our time together distraction free. Have your family support you and provide, what are we, Tuesday, Thursday, 9 to 1 is our schedule. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's really important that you guys commit inside and outside of the classroom. This is not an easy class. This is not an easy test. I'm going to just go ahead and throw that out there in the beginning. If you want to do well on this exam, you got to work hard. You got to commit. And I need you guys to do that starting today. So distraction-free zone. I love it. You guys are all sitting up. Nobody looks too cozy. All of you are centering your camera. This is exactly how we need to be. So distraction-free, where I can see you. Again, have your family, work with you. Tell them, put a sign on your door. This is my study time. This is my class time. As I mentioned earlier, we do get breaks. We get a 10-minute break on the hour-ish. So in the 4 hours we're together, we get 30 minutes, right? 10-minute break at 10, 10-minute break at 11, and 10-minute break at 12. That's your opportunity to return phone calls and texts and unload the dishwasher or whatever it is that you need to do. That's your time. When we take a break, you're welcome to turn your camera off. We really don't want to see what you're doing on break. So you're welcome to turn your camera off. Just remember to turn it back on when you come back. And the one thing I absolutely will not tolerate, will not tolerate, is you guys driving while you're on this Zoom call. If I see you driving, I will remove you from the call. You're welcome to come back when you get to your destination, but I'm not going to allow you to put yourself in danger or others on the road. It's kind of hard to read PowerPoints and take notes and pay attention when you're driving. So I'm not going to put up with it. If you need to be mobile, then you just need to miss class. It's like that. Questions or comments on that? So I've mentioned a test, and that's not quite true. I've tried to ease you guys into it. The truth is there are 2 exams that stand between you and your real estate license. There are 2 exams that stand between you and being a real estate agent. The first exam is my end of class exam. The last thing we'll do together in May is take a test. Now we're going to talk more about this as we go, obviously. You have to get a 75%. There's your time. You guys, we're going to do math in this class. I'll talk about math in just a second, but I need you guys to know right now, I cannot let you use the calculator on your smartphone. So for your exam, I need you guys to go calculator shopping. If you don't have a basic 10-key calculator, please make that a priority. Do that this weekend, because we're going to start math. Actually, we'll start it on Thursday, do a little introduction. but I think it's important that you guys be practicing on the calculator that you're going to use for your exam. So if you don't have a very basic, guys, no smartphones, because your phone has Google on it, right? So I can't let you use your phone. I also can't let you use a calculator that can store formulas. So the more basic, the better. If you have any questions when you're calculator shopping, just reach out to me. I'll approve it or not. So that's one thing you guys can go ahead and put on your to-do list. Let's go calculator shopping. We do offer a retake exam if you're eligible. We'll talk more about that again as we go. So 2 exams, end of class exam is step 1, the first hurdle. Once you pass my exam, then you go on to take your state exam. So is everybody good with this? There's 2 tests that stand in between you and your real estate career. Well, I don't know if you're good with it or not, but it is what it is. Everybody understand? I guess that's what I'm asking. The exam, yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to be rude.
No, please.
If this can probably wait, but your test, if we do good on your test, does that mean we have a better chance of passing this? Okay.
You make up in the 90s in my test? No. Is that a guarantee? Of course not.
Right.
But sure, the better you do on my test, absolutely. It's a direct correlation. Yep. Yep.
I have a question too.
Yes.
So the percentage here is like the requirements. I see 71% is the requirements to move on to the next level. Okay, I get you. Thank you.
So yeah, the state, there's 2 sections in the state exam. There's a national section and the state section. We'll spend our next couple months breaking that down, the difference in the 2. But there's 2 sections you have to pass for the state exam. This is the exam issued by the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. Other questions so far? I know I said test and I said math. I think both in the same sentence. So there's like 2 4-letter words that I just threw at you. You know.
Is the questions we see on your test going to be the same questions we'll see on the state exam?
No, 2 different tests. Okay. So how do you jump these 2 hurdles? How do you get your real estate license? Well, again, you guys commit starting today. Do I have everybody's promise? Y'all want to pinky swear me? Everybody promise me you're going to start today. Don't wait until April. Don't wait until May. We're going to start today. And again, I'm going to tell you how you can get started today. The best way you can pass, utilize the tools you've been given. I know that says perfect class attendance. Bear with me. The point that we're trying to make there is the more you're here, the more the information that you get. Your textbook, we'll introduce you to your textbook in just a second, but this is a great tool. If you don't have your book yet and you haven't been in contact with Lane, get with Lane after class. Don't call her now. I would consider that a distraction. So if you don't have your book or you haven't made arrangements with Lane yet to get your book, reach out to her after class. I have an online program for you guys called Learn, Test, Pass. We'll talk more about Learn, Test, Pass in just a second, but there's all sorts of good things in Learn, Test, Pass. There's additional quizzes, there's some interactive flashcards, all sorts of good stuff in Learn, Test, Pass. We'll talk more about that in just a second. And then you guys can make your own flashcards, outlines, notes. You can purchase flashcards, but honestly, I think they mean more when they come from you. The truth is you guys are going into a brand new industry with a whole new vocabulary. So you're going to learn a lot of new words. And your your exams are application questions, which means they're not going to ask you, what does this word mean? They're going to put this word in a situation and expect you to apply it. So knowing what the word means is only the beginning. Now, I don't think you should put every single word on a flashcard. you would have more flashcards by the end than what you know what to do with. But I do think you should reserve your flashcards for those words that you're just not sure of, those words that you don't know, those words that you can't repeat out loud just yet. So making your own flashcards, your own outlines, taking your own notes. I do have my PowerPoints available to you guys. So if you don't want to write down every single word on the PowerPoint, you don't have to. I got you taken care of. I'd rather you guys make notes to yourself and pay attention to the conversation, our time together, than focusing on making sure you have every word. You already have every word. I think the biggest tool you guys can do, the biggest thing you guys can do is listen. Just listen. You may think you know real estate because you watch HTV or you bought a house once 5 years ago. That's not going to help you get past your exam. So just listen, spend time listening. Remember, we are recording. I will provide you with the YouTube channel. So if you want to listen again at your own pace, you have that option. But I think the biggest thing to help you guys listen is to be distraction free. We all think we're good multitaskers. Who's a great multitasker? Come on, I know you. Yeah, I am too. But you know what? It's hard to multitask because you're not giving one thing your all. You're giving several things, some of it. Does that make sense? So when you're multitasking, something loses some oomph. And if it's this class, may not have the end results that you hope for. So listen. I also do want to hear from you guys when it's right, when it's appropriate. Please stop and ask yourself, before you ask a question, please stop and ask yourself, is this relevant to the material that we're talking about right now? Just ask yourself that. Is it relevant? If it's not, you guys have my name and or my number and email. You can reach out to me after class. If you want to ask me about your personal experience, this is why I'm here after class. While I do want to hear from you guys, please understand I also reserve the right to keep us on the right track. It's easy to get derailed. And when we get derailed, something doesn't get covered. Again, we're doing a lot in 2 months together. We're doing a lot. So I've reserved the right to keep us on track because that's my job for you guys, is to provide you with all the information that you need for your exams. So if I say, ooh, can we talk about that later? Or can we talk about that on break? Or can we talk about that after class? I'm not being mean. I'm just trying to keep us on the right track to make sure we get all the information. This class is also a no judgment zone. There are no bad questions. I don't want anybody to be shy, worrying about what your peers are going to think. Again, you have the option to send just me a direct message, or you have the option to reach out to me after class. No judgment whatsoever. I was where you were once. I got my license in 2008. Gosh, that was a long time ago. I got my license in 2008. So I was where you were at once. I get it. So we talked about the importance of being here, not just in front of the camera, but here during class. What happens after class? What happens outside of class? Well, they say, I'm not really sure who they are, but they say that you need to devote, for every hour we spend in class, you need to be spending 2 to 3 hours outside of class. We meet for 8 hours a week, which means you should plan on 16 to 24 hours of study time outside of class. I just gave you a full-time job, didn't I? There you go. Not full-time, maybe part-time. Maybe I just gave you a part-time job. So your commitment, your dedication is not just Tuesday, Thursday, 9 to 1. Your commitment and your dedication is also after class. 16 to 24 hours is what they say. How do you get that time in? I think the best way to do that is to schedule study time on your calendar. I want you to have these class dates on your calendar anyway. We'll talk about that. But I also think if you're going to study for 8 hours on Saturday, put it in your calendar and treat it like an actual appointment. Don't stand yourself up. Don't do yourself a disservice. Please don't sit there and say, I'll study when I find time. I'll study when I have time. I don't know what your plate looks like, but for me, time just doesn't magically appear. I have to schedule things. I have to create things. So I encourage you guys to commit, again, not just to the class, but to studying outside of class as well. For those of you that got your book already, how many of you have read the first 3 units? Most of you? Good, 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 good. You're well on your way. Your homework, every single class, your homework is to review where we've been and look ahead at where we're going. We don't need to talk about homework assignments. That's what it is. Your homework is always to review where we've been. What did we talk about today? And to look ahead at where we're going. And again, we'll introduce you to your textbook in just a second. Let's talk about goals. You guys are here for a reason. Some of you may want to be residential sales. Some of you may want to go into commercial. Some of you may want to go into property management. You all have a goal. Yes, maybe you're just here because you bought enough homes over the years. You're just kind of curious about it. We all have a reason that we're here. That's the big goal. There are several smaller goals you need to focus on before you get to the big goal. Those smaller goals are passing my end of class exam and passing your state exam. Y'all, please don't put your cart in front of your horse. You maybe want to open your own real estate firm. Maybe you want to, be in residential sales. Guess what? You can't do any of that until you achieve the smaller goals of passing your exams. So keep those priorities. Don't get too ahead of yourself. I want you to dream and I want you to have goals, but you got to take the small steps to get there first. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to do some reflection in this class. After each class, reflect, what did we cover today? What did I learn new today? Was there a brand new word that I learned today? Was there a new concept, a new term? What is it I'm not sure of? After each class and after each unit, I think you guys should spend some time reflecting. Again, your homework is always review where we've been and look ahead at where we're going. Questions or comments? Is anybody scared yet? Please don't be scared. We will get through this together. I'm absolutely dedicated and devoted to you guys. Give me the same back. So I ask you, are you ready? It's a true adventure, real estate. Every day is a different day. Every single day is a different day. We celebrate the small wins when your client's offer gets accepted, when you get the listing, when you get the new tenant, if you're in property management, closing. Celebrate the small steps. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get out of this just for 1 second. This is the email that you guys received from Lane. This is the email that you guys use to access this class. And there's a couple things in this email that I want to point out. If you haven't read the email yet, let's see, Lane's registration and contract, excuse me. There's something here I think you guys have to sign. Is that right? Is there something you have to e-sign? Okay. So if you haven't done that yet, please go ahead and do that after class. Again, I would consider that a distraction to do it now. Lane will hunt you down if not, because she does need some kind of signature from you. We mentioned Learn, Test, Pass a few minutes ago, and we're getting ready to meet Learn, Test, Pass. But one thing you guys need to do, again, part of your homework assignment, is to create your Learn, Test, Pass account. Has anybody done that yet? Has anybody created their account? A couple of you? Good, good, good. So there's a little video tutorial about how to create your account. I think this is like 2.5 minutes. It's a very short video tutorial. And then the link you'll use to create your Learn, Test, Pass account is right here. So watch the video tutorial and then click on the link. And again, this is an email that you guys got from Lane. Make that a priority. Before we come together on Thursday, let's have everybody in Learn, Test, Pass. So there's like a day and please don't do it now. I would consider that a distraction. See where I'm heading with this distraction thing? Once you've watched the little video tutorial and you're still, if you're having problems getting into Learn, Test, Pass, then you reach out to Jane and here's her email address. Jane is kind of our IT person. So anytime you're having tech issues, Jane's the one, not Julie. Jane is the one that can help. So you have her email in your email from Lane. Again, if you have any problems accessing Learn, Test, Pass, don't hesitate to reach out to Jane. She'll help you get in. Let's see, Zoom, no connecting during smartphones or on smartphones. You need a laptop, a desktop, maybe an iPhone, but I still think, not an iPhone, I'm sorry, an iPad. See, don't ask me about technology. So something that you can actually see the screen, laptop, desktop. This is the link you guys clicked on to be here. And then these are our class dates. So I think something else you guys should do for homework is go through and put these dates in your calendar. So you have that time committed. You have that time devoted. Our end of class exam is on the last day of class. So May 19th. So we are right at 2 months out from your exam with a lot of information in between. So have those dates, Learn, Test, Pass. Once you get set up and Learn, Test, Pass, it's going to look a little something like this. We're going to spend a lot of time together and Learn, Test, Pass over the next couple months. The first thing I want to point out, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission provides us with a syllabus. And the Real Estate Commission says if we cover everything in the syllabus, then you have everything that you need to pass your state exam. This class was written with the syllabus in my hand. So if you want to know, what are we going to cover? Julie, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to cover? We'll flip through this thing. This will give you an idea, but also it's in the syllabus. You don't need to ask me during class, are we going to talk about this? Are we going to talk about that? All my secrets are right here on these 119 pages for you. So everything that we talk about is going to be from the syllabus. Again, the Real Estate Commission says if we talk about everything in the syllabus, that's all the information you need to know for your exam. The other thing I have for you guys in Learn, Test, Pass is a tentative schedule. Not just our dates, but roughly what we're going to cover and when, what unit we're going to cover and when. So remember, you're always looking back at where we've been, reviewing where we've been, and looking ahead at where we're going. So how do you know what to look ahead at? It's right here in the tentative schedule. And I'll help you guys too by letting you know, okay, next week we're going to talk about this. Next class, we're going to get into this unit. I don't go in order of the book. So you see, we go from like unit 6 to unit 20, back to 7. I don't go in order of the book. I go in order of the syllabus. So if you pick the book up and want to read it from cover to cover, you're going to be, we'll get to it, but you're going to be out of order. Just a quick reminder, we don't have class. What is that, like 2 weeks? So make sure you have that noted. No class on March 29th. As I mentioned earlier, yeah, your end of class exam is May 19th. I also got a couple dates here I want you guys to go ahead and put down in your calendar. If you're eligible for the retake is scheduled for May 24th. Maybe you need that date, maybe you don't. But please go ahead and pencil in that date right now so you have it. The other date that we have There's a cram course available to you guys on May 14th, and I'm not going to talk about it just yet because it's way too early. But if you, the important thing is that you notice the date, May 14th. That's a cram course. I'll talk about that as we get closer to that time. Just get that date set aside. Question came in, why don't we have class on the 29th? I have something personal on that day. The dates that you registered did not include that date. So you were given, when you registered, you were given the class dates.
I'm sorry, what day did you say was the cram day? I'm sorry.
May 14th. So again, you're penciling in the 24th and the 14th. I'll talk more about the cram course like when we get to May. But I just want you guys to have these dates set aside, penciled in, so you can plan for them. The rest of Learn, Test, Pass, you can see you got a navigation toolbar here on the left. So here's the units in the order we're going to go. And within each unit, there's, and every unit's a little bit different. So you may have a little pre-test, get you familiar with the unit. You may have an actual quiz to help you review the information once we've covered it in class. There's also quizzes in your textbook. We'll talk about those in a second. And then with each unit is my PowerPoint. So I provide you guys with this. I don't want you guys getting so bogged down on the PowerPoints. The PowerPoint, if all you're going to do is study the PowerPoint, I'm telling you, the PowerPoint alone isn't enough. The PowerPoint is meant to direct you where to study and focus on in the book. It's meant to point you in the right direction. And I see you guys, we're getting ready to go through a lot. And I see some of you try to write down every single word, and you make my hand hurt, all that writing you're going to do in the next 2 months. So hopefully I can alleviate some of that by providing you guys with my PowerPoints, and you know that you have access to them once you log into Learn, Test, Pass. I'd rather you listening and paying attention than, oh, I got to write this down. Oh. Fair enough? Questions or comments so far? Good times, isn't it?
Is there a print option on the PowerPoint so that I could possibly print it off?
Yeah, so you can download it, and then once you download it, you can print the PDF. It'll download as a PDF. You're probably looking at about a ream of paper if you want to start printing, though. I'm just going to put that out there.
All right, thank you.
Yep. I mean, I want you guys to do what's best for you, but if you want to save a tree, you may just want to refer to Learn, Test, Pass. So again, we're going to go through, we're in Learn, Test, Pass practically every class together. Additionally, you guys, of course, will want to be in it outside of class, reviewing where we've been and looking ahead at where we're going. Okay, so let's meet this thing. Did y'all think you were getting a phone book when you picked this up, or when you got it from Lane? That's what I always think of when I see these things. All right, let's look. We're going to look at Unit 1 in just 1 minute. But before, let's actually go against the grain a little bit. And let's look at the back. Let's start looking at page 771. I just want to point out a few things to you guys, encouraging you to start spending time with your book. How many of you, when I just said the word math, got a little, again, thought I said a 4-letter word that I shouldn't have said out loud in public when I just met you guys? So here's the deal. There is math in this class. The math alone can't fail you, which means you can miss all the math and still pass the test. However, if you can get some of the math, it can help boost your score a little bit. If math is not your thing, I encourage you to, first off, take a few big deep breaths and know that we will get through it. But if math is not your thing, I encourage you to start on 771 and flip through. I don't want you guys to study this section, but flip through, kind of warm yourself up a little bit. There's Introduction to Calculators on 773. We got to do a little bit with measurement. Obviously, you need to know how to measure a house, for example. So a little bit with measurement. There's more in this section than what you need, which is why I don't want you guys studying it. But I do think it's a good way to help you guys warm up if it's been a minute since you've done math, or if math isn't your thing. Fractions, decimals, and percentages on 761 or 781, sorry, 781. So again, flip through this section. Don't study it. Flip through it, get yourself warmed up. Next, well, when we come together on Thursday, we're going to do a little math introduction to help you get started as well. Guys, here's the thing. If you're sitting here saying, I can't do math, you're probably right. There's not much I can say or do to change that. But if you're willing to let your wall fall down a little bit, you never know. You very well might just surprise yourself. I mean, you heard me say we're only using a basic calculator, right? Add, subtract, multiply, divide, and percent. Those are the keys that we're dealing with. We're not getting into like complex, nothing like that. There's some math practice starting on page 803. As we go through the math in the units, I'm going to point out the numbers starting on page 803 to relate to the math that we just covered in class. So don't worry about 803 right now. I'll tell you, when we do unit 3, I'm going to say these are the numbers that relate to the math that we just did. So you can get yourself some extra practice that way. Flip ahead. Remember I mentioned you guys are coming into a whole new industry with a whole new vocabulary. That vocabulary can be found on page 831. Don't know what a word means? Look it up. Write it on a flashcard. If you can't get the answer you're looking for in the glossary, you have this phenomenal tool at your fingertips called Google. A lot of it is about researching, helping yourself, the different avenues, the different resources you have. And again, if you're really stuck, before y'all start banging your head on the desk, that's why you have me. So I encourage you to reach out to me if you're stuck. That's why I'm here to help. One more, let's see, 2 more things. Page, dog-eared here, page 861. At the end of every unit, there's a quiz. We'll talk about those unit quizzes in just a minute. The answers to the unit quizzes start on page 861, so you can grade yourself. When we introduce you to the math on Thursday, I'll show you a tip that you have to grade yourself, so you can gauge yourself how you're doing as we go. And you guys see how page 861, they give you the number A, B, C, or D, and then there's a number in parentheses. You guys see that number in parentheses? That's the page number. That's where you can, why did I miss this? Go to that page and you can find that information. When we come together on Thursday, I'm going to take some time out of class and offer you some tips and tricks on how you can read some of these test questions, how you can interpret some of these questions. Like I said, I mean, I look around this Zoom call, myself included. It's been a minute since we took a test, some of us, right? For those of you that are young, you have an advantage over the rest of us. So in addition to knowing the material, we got to teach you how to interpret and read these test questions as well. So we'll spend some time, a little bit of time with that on Thursday morning. And then the last thing I like to point out in the back of your book is on page 879. And the reason why I like the index, because if you're looking for one topic, you can find everywhere in the book that that one topic is covered. So if you're not sure of a topic, tear your book apart. Learn, test, pass. We will get you through it. You have the YouTube channel. We will get you through it. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's look on page 17. We're getting ready to do unit 1 when we come back from break. We're just going to jump right in. But since I mentioned the unit quiz, every single unit in your textbook has a quiz at the end. There's quizzes in Learn, Test, Pass. There's quizzes in the book. My suggestion for the quizzes in your book, and this is just my suggestion, when you're taking the quizzes in the book, don't circle the answer in your book. Put your answers on a different piece of paper. Because once you say number 1 is C, you will always know number 1 is C, and you can't go back and retake that quiz. You guys with me? So if you leave it blank, then you can come back in a couple months when you're preparing for your exam and take these quizzes again. Getting ready to go to break in 1 minute, but before we do that, I do have a homework assignment for you guys. Very first day. I already have a homework. In addition to getting your calculator and putting dates in your calendar, I want to hear from you guys. I'd like you to send me an introduction of yourself. The Real Estate Commission requires me to verify that you all have the current textbook. The little lighthouse on it, I think it says 10th edition. So the selfie with the textbook allows me to see that you have the current textbook, but I also want the opportunity to meet you guys. Why are you here? What's your big goal? What do you hope to accomplish? And for those of you that just went, whoa, I didn't write down her phone number and email the first time she told me to, I got you. This may or may not be your first time through pre-licensing, but it is not mine. Please wait until after class to do this. Doing so during class would be considered a distraction. Very good. So at some point between now and May 19th, I want to hear from you guys. Verify that you have the correct book. Even if I already know you, new class, new clean slate. So even if I already know you, I still want to hear from you again. What questions do we have? First hour. Everybody good so far? Still excited? Still going to hang in there with me? Awesome. So let's go ahead and take our first break. I do put a clock up just in case there's any concern or any confusion about how long a 10-minute break is. So if you're not sure, you can come back and check my screen and see. So you, again, during break, you're welcome to turn your camera off. Please remember when you come back to turn it back on. So everybody take 10. When we come back, we're going to jump right into unit 1. All right. That little sound was a little weak. I'm trying a new countdown clock. I may find us a better sound that we can actually hear, but we are back and cameras are coming on. One way I can monitor attendance, I take screenshots for attendance. So when we come back from break, I'll do a screenshot. And again, if you're not here, I can't give you credit. If for some reason you come back from break late, just send me a message. Julie, I'm back. All I ever ask you guys is communicate with me. I'm not a mind reader. I don't have a crystal ball. I just ask that you guys communicate with me. If you're late, if you need to miss class. So let's see, it looks like a couple of us, if we're back, we need to adjust our cameras. Well, first off, you can tell if your camera's on. You guys look at your device. Do you see a little light? If you see the little light, you know your camera's on. But a couple of you, let's see, it looks like I need you to adjust. So Michaela, if you could adjust, Darnella, if you could adjust. And I know tech issues on day one. Yep, we're working through all the kinks. See, this is the fun thing about Zoom because we're all on a different device and we all have different internet speeds, right? No matter where you are, we have different. So part of the challenge with being online is dealing with everybody's device and everything. So let's see. I do not see you, Laura. I know you're working through your technical difficulties, not unless you have two different sign-ons. I see one moving. I do see a camera on one of your sign-ons, but I'm looking at your desk. And I know sometimes too, we're all good on the first couple of days, but as time goes on, cameras start going up. We think, well, maybe my camera doesn't need, y'all have lovely ceilings. I can tell you, your ceiling is gorgeous. I don't want to see your ceiling though. I want to see you. So you can help make sure that that camera stays on. And then we have no question about whether or not you're here, your attendance. So all I ask is you guys communicate. I'm really a reasonable person. I really am. Just communicate with me. That's all I ask. So I am taking attendance. You may see a little flash on your end. Smile for the camera if you wish.
Ma'am, I'm at work, so that's why it's kind of like yeah.
Okay.
But I'm here though.
All right, as long as I can see you, that's what matters. Thank you. And I do see you. Okay. And I'm going to find a better clock for next class. So getting ready to jump in, let's talk about a few more things. And first off, we mentioned the Real Estate Commission earlier. Understand very early that the Real Estate Commission is the one that regulates your license. The Real Estate Commission is the one that issues you a real estate license. You have to prove to the Real Estate Commission that you deserve a real estate license. How do you prove that? Well, first off, you pass the exams. You pass my end of class exam and you pass a state exam. That tells the commission that you have the minimum level of competency necessary to work with the people. Because look at the Real Estate Commission's main purpose. The Real Estate Commission's main purpose is not to help you make lots and lots of money. It's not to help you work with lots of buyers and sellers. Their main purpose is to protect the public when they are working with you. Do a disservice to the Real Estate Commission's public, they will discipline your license. We're going to talk all about disciplinary actions and all that. We'll get to it. But I think it's important that we understand who regulates it. The Real Estate Commission giveth you your license. The Real Estate Commission can taketh it away. So that's why we're here, to cover the foundation, to build on your foundation, the law and the rule, so they feel comfortable with you out there working with their public. Once you get your license, the Real Estate Commission, they do regulate pre-licensing. The Real Estate Commission regulates this class. Once you're licensed, there's further education from the Real Estate Commission. You have something called post-licensing. So once you get your license, you have 90 additional hours of post-licensing. And they break that 90 hours into 3 30-hour courses. So once you get your license, and we're going to talk more about post as we go. And then if you want to maintain an active license, we have to do continuing education each year. So every year you want to be active and you want to practice. We only do 8 hours of CE a year, 2 4-hour classes. Again, we'll talk a lot more about this. I just want you guys to know what the Real Estate Commission does. We're going to spend more time. You'll be old chums with the Real Estate Commission by the time I'm done with you. But just getting introduced to who they are and what they do.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Post is when you become provisional, right?
We're going to talk about your provisional status. Post is how you remove that provisional status. So upon licensure, you have a provisional license. Once you complete your post licensing, that provisional status is removed. Yep. Okay. As you guys start reading these test questions, guys, I'm telling you, these test questions, they're almost as hard as the material. One word can change the meaning of everything. When you're reading these test questions and these answers, every single word means something. Again, when we come together on Thursday, we're going to spend some time on how you guys can dissect and interpret these test questions. But one thing I'd like to kind of introduce you to right now is something called an absolute word. When you see these in a test question, let me ask you guys this. Is there an exception to the word must? Is there an exception to the word always and never? Those are pretty strong words, aren't they? So by you paying attention, again, what we're doing early is helping you guys interpret these questions. And one thing you can do is look out for these absolute words. They're absolute because there is no wiggle room. There is no if A, then B. These are words, they are what they are. So we're getting ready to blow through Unit 1. I call Unit 1 our warm up. And we're going to blow through Unit 1. We're going to get started in Unit 2 today. For those of you that have looked ahead, there's some weird stuff in Unit 2, isn't there? So we get you warmed up in Unit 1, and then we just kind of throw you in the deep end from there. I hope you can swim once we get through Unit 1. And that's why I want to cover Unit 1. And then when we come together on Thursday, we're going to look at some of these quiz questions in Unit 1 on page 17 and 18. So if you haven't done Unit 1 yet, if you haven't done the quiz at the end of Unit 1, please go ahead and do it before Thursday. And then we're going to dissect some of these questions on Unit 1, help get you guys started. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for 1 second. So you guys should all be looking at each other. You smile and wave at everybody. Hey guys. And I'm going to pull up, I got to switch out PowerPoints for some reason, because it's technology, but Zoom on my laptop doesn't like me to have more than one PowerPoint up at a time. So we shut that one down. We're getting another one. Now I'm going to share my screen with you again. And when we get into my PowerPoints in just a second, every single PowerPoint in the top right corner has a star. You may see a red star, a yellow star, or a green star. That star is directing you to the level of knowledge you need for that material. And sometimes these stars build on each other. So for example, a green star is telling you, you need to know what this word means. We may take this level 1 and build onto it with a level 2, a more comprehensive understanding. Not only do you know what it means, but you could use it in a sentence. And then some things we're going to build up to see level 3, red stars. Red star material, you should be able to explain this to somebody else. You have that in-depth of knowledge, that much understanding, that you can look at one of your family members and explain it to them in a way that they understand it. That's one of the best ways to gauge yourself, if you can explain it to somebody. So some material is more, let's say, important than others. And each PowerPoint will direct you to that level. How deep of an understanding do you need? The other thing that you may see on my PowerPoints, not all of them, but some of them, you may see a red arrow with a PT on it. That PT stands for problem topics. These are topics that the Real Estate Commission says that licensees across the state have struggled with on their exam. So try to point out these problem topics to help you guys focus on the material. And then the other thing that you may see is our state flag. If you see our state flag, that is something that's just specific to North Carolina. So you may remember when we were talking about your state exam, there's 2 sections. There's a national section and a state section. The national section is the big overview picture. The national section is stuff that all of us across the country have to know. State things are specific just to North Carolina. What are some things that set North Carolina apart from other states? So as we go throughout this class, we're going to introduce you to state-specific content. That's stuff that's all a good candidate for the state section of your exam. The other thing my PowerPoints have that we'll see in just a second, on the bottom right, you'll see a page number, or you'll see a number. That number is a page number. So if you like to follow along on the book, I'll give you the page number where we are. Let me go back for 1 second. When you're calculator shopping this weekend, or this week, tomorrow, this week, you may want to get yourself some highlighters. You may want to get a green highlighter, a yellow highlighter, and a pink or orange highlighter to help you know that level of focus. So calculators, highlighters, Amazon can have it to you here by Wednesday, Thursday. Oh, she's already been highlighter shopping. Awesome. So unit one, first off, everybody take a big deep breath with me. Ready? In through your nose, out through your mouth. Okay. Unit 1 is our warm up. Here's the good news. Unit 1 is only all green stars. Unit 1 is kind of our introduction, kind of give you a feel for what to expect. I doubt you're going to see any test questions from Unit 1, but there's a lot of information in Unit 1 that we're going to take and expand on and build on as we go throughout the course. So while it may be a green star here, I may eventually turn it into a yellow star or a red star. So we're just introducing you to some concepts in Unit 1. So in this unit, we're going to distinguish, we're going to talk about land, real estate, real property. We're going to briefly introduce you to personal property. We're going to talk about the physical and economic characteristics of real property. What are the things that define real property? We're going to talk about something called highest and best use. And we're also going to talk about the pluses and minuses of real estate. Real estate is an investment. Maybe if you're not an investor, you're still investing by purchasing your own home, for example. So there's pluses and minuses to everything. Real estate is no exception. And we're going to talk about real estate as a market. Real estate is a market that fluctuates. We have highs and lows. We have ups and downs. So we're going to talk about supply and demand, how it relates to real estate. So the first thing we're going to do is distinguish between real property and personal property. Please note, there's a green star in the top right. Bottom right, you see the number 2. You guys see that? Yes, okay. Again, sometimes my PowerPoint's quirky. So the number in the bottom right tells you what page we're on. So the first thing we're going to do is distinguish between real property and personal property. Now we're going to break real property down in just a second. But the big picture of real property is land and everything that's permanently attached to it. Personal property is everything that's not real property. The distinguishing characteristics between personal property and real property is if you can pick it up and move it. You can pick it up and move it easily. It's personal property. If not, it's real property. So let's just pause for a second. Very first slide. Let's pause and have a discussion. There's a myth out there on the streets. And that myth says, nothing you learn in pre-licensing you'll use in your career. Well, I'm on a personal mission to debunk that myth. Here we are, day 1, slide 1. You think buyers want to know what's included when they purchase a home? Do you think they want to know what stays and what goes? Absolutely. With that being said, I don't think you're going to use every single thing that we talk about in pre-licensing in your in-practice experience, but there is a lot in here that we do. And again, helping buyers distinguish, when I buy this house, what do I get? Is a question that comes from buyers often. And when we start unit 2, we're going to talk more about personal property. So we'll get into more in-depth in personal property. Let's first break down real property. To break down real property, let's talk about the difference between land, real estate, and real property. Land is the surface, the earth's surface. Everything above it to infinity, known as your air rights, that we'll talk about in unit 2. And everything below the surface to the center of the earth, known as your subsurface rights. Again, that we'll talk about in unit 2. So land is the surface, the earth's surface, everything above it and everything below it. Land includes things that are attached by nature. Trees, ponds. When you take land and you add physical improvements, you have real estate. So man-made improvements, the structures, the fences, the sheds. Once you take land and add physical improvements to it, you have real estate. And then when you take real estate and you add the rights of ownership, you get real property. Purchasing property comes with rights. It comes with benefits. We're going to talk about your legal bundle of rights, also in unit 2. So again, this is one of these topics that we're just introducing you to right now. We're going to expand on them shortly. Let's talk about some physical characteristics of real property. What are some physical characteristics of real property? Well, real property is immobile. It is where it is, right? When I see immobility, I always think, you guys know when you do a Google search, a map search, and you get the little red flag telling you it is here, that's where it is. No matter what you do, that is where it is. It's immobile. It's the geographic location of any given parcel. The parcel of land can't be changed. Structures come and go, but the land will always remain. Land is indestructible. Again, structures come and go. Houses, buildings, fences, they're not permanent, but the land is. And real property is unique. No two parcels of land are exactly the same. Even side by side, touching lots, they have differences. They have, they're unique. No two homes are the same. Even in your cookie cutterest of neighborhoods, every single home is unique. It all changes when you walk in the front door. So every property, every home is unique. There are also some economic characteristics of land. Land is scarce. There's only so much land to go around. This is why, for example, land on water tends to be more scarce, because there's only so many homes you can put around this lake or up and down the East Coast. I know you guys know the answer to this one. What are the three most important things about real estate? You ready? Location, location, location. Have you guys ever heard that before? The three most important things about real estate are location, 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 and that is absolutely the truth. The value that a property has, the value that a structure has, greatly depends on its location. We could put a value on a home in Winston-Salem, give it a value. Then we could take that home in Winston-Salem, pick it up and move it to Kernersville. And it's going to have a different value. Why? Because we changed the location. Location a lot of times comes down to people's personal choices, people's personal preferences. Situs is a word you're going to see in your book, S-I-T-U-S. That's an individual's personal preference. It's not right or not wrong. It's their personal preference. I could probably, I'm going to venture out and say this. I could take this class and put us in two different groups. Some of us prefer the beach. The rest of you like the mountains. Where are my beach people? Yep. Where are my mountain people? Yep. We all have a preference, don't we? We all have a preference. Where would you rather be? I want my toes in the sand when it's a little warmer. That's our preference, our location. Improvements are the additions that we make to the land. So our structures, sidewalks, plumbing for water, sewer, electricity. Anything when we take bare land and improve upon it, we've made changes. And then structures are also permanent, permanence of investment. Real estate was always meant to be a long-term investment. Real estate as a short-term investment has challenges. And as we said, the land stays the same. Structures come and go, but the land stays the same. And once the land is plumbed and hooked up to water or public water and sewer, that's a permanence of investment. Once it's hooked up, it's always hooked up. Knock down the structure, build a new one. There's a term that we're going to talk about when we get to Unit 17. I know that seems so far away right now. When we get to Unit 17, we're going to talk more about a term called highest and best use. Highest and best use is the most profitable single use to which a property currently has. You may not be utilizing the property in its highest and best use, but there's one use which makes it the most profitable. If you guys are, no matter where you are, I'm sure you're familiar with a growing, maybe a growing street or a growing area. And maybe retail starting to come up. So you got grocery stores and a drugstore and maybe a couple restaurants and McDonald's, right? It's starting to, retail and commercial starting to grow up. And there's that one house on the corner that doesn't look like it fits. You guys know what I'm talking about? That one house. And you think, what are they holding out for? That one house is not maximizing its highest and best use. It doesn't meet its surrounding areas of commercial, of retail. Highest and best use is the appraiser's tool. So in Unit 17, we actually get to put on an appraiser's hat and talk about how an appraiser thinks. And one thing that the appraiser will always look for is highest and best use. In Unit 6, we're going to talk about land use controls. Some of our public land use controls are zoning. Zoning are local regulations and restrictions on how we can use our land. And we also have private land use controls. If you're in an HOA, you may have restrictive covenants. So again, this is going to be in Unit 6. We'll see in a couple weeks. So as we mentioned earlier, real estate is an investment, and there's pluses and minuses to everything. One advantage of real estate could be a good rate of return. Has anybody tried to sell a house in the last year and a half or so? Anybody? You probably got a pretty good rate of return, didn't you? Yeah. Were you floored? Were you blown away? Probably. I always think of real estate as a pendulum, and that pendulum is constantly moving. And right now that pendulum is up here in a seller's market. But one day that pendulum is going to go back. And one day we will be in a buyer's market again. I don't know when, but it will happen. You may not get as good of a rate of return when that pendulum swings back as what you are right now. Another advantage of real estate, values tend to keep pace with inflation. When times are good in the economy, real estate's good. When times are not so good in the economy, real estate's not so good. Please understand, real estate is a market and markets fluctuate. And real estate is no exception. Another advantage of real estate, if you own real estate, you may have some possible tax advantages. Unit 18 is our accountant hat. We get to act like an accountant for a minute. So we'll talk about some possible tax advantages for investing in real estate, being an owner of real estate. Disadvantages of real estate. Real estate is not liquid. What do I mean by something that's not liquid? There you go.
Can't be fast.
That's right. That's right. If I need money today, I'm not going to get it from my house, am I? If I need money today, I'm cashing in stocks or bonds, whatever. Real estate is not liquid. If I need money today, I got to put it on the market, find a buyer, go into contract. I can get money for it eventually, but it's not, as Stephen said in the chat, it's not cash ready. Real estate, another disadvantage of real estate, it can get expensive because we may have times where we have to seek legal counsel or tax counsel. One thing about this class, we're going to introduce you to lots of hats, shall I say. I've already mentioned we get to wear an appraisal hat. We get to wear an accountant hat. We get to wear lots of hats in this class. A lot of this class is teaching you just enough to be dangerous. A lot of this class is teaching you when you need to advise your clients to talk to an attorney, when to advise your clients to talk to an accountant. Another disadvantage is there's work involved to grow money. You can't purchase property, not do anything, any kind of update to it for 30 years, and then expect to get your money plus some back. If you want to get money back, if you want to get a return, you have to grow your investment, put a new roof on it every once in a while, that kind of thing. And another disadvantage is the high degree of risk. Right now, if you're selling, no risk whatsoever. As I said, that pendulum will, I promise it will come back. And there's going to be a higher degree of risk. Real estate is a market, and markets fluctuate. So on page 8, we start talking about the scope of real estate business. If you're going into sales, residential sales or commercial sales, you're going into the brokerage part of it. Brokerage is just the business of bringing people together. You as the agent are helping connect the buyer and the seller. You're helping connect the two, you're brokeraging the deal. Another aspect is the appraisal. Again, unit 17, we'll talk all about appraisal. The appraisers offer their opinion of value. Appraisers help us determine value. You may be considered going into property management. Property management, you're bringing landlord and tenant together. And you're helping the landlord or the owner manage their property. Unit 12 is dedicated to property management. So if that's the avenue you're thinking about going, you get to wear a property management hat in Unit 12. Financing are referring to our lenders. We need money to purchase real estate. Some people don't have cash laying around. Some people do, but some people don't. And we need to go to lenders to ask for financing. Help us borrow money so we can purchase our real estate. Units 14 and 15 are our financing units. We get 2 whole units to act like a lender, put on our lender hat. We're helping to provide advice. I know this is counseling. I always hesitate to use that word. Let's say we help provide advice. Buyers and sellers, tenants and landlords are going to look at you and say, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? I think it's important that we understand from the beginning, for the most part, we are fact finders. Fact finders. I provide the facts for the consumer to make the decision. I'm not the one buying this house. So does my opinion really matter? Not much. We're offering advice. We're giving our knowledge to help our clients and customers make the right decision or a good decision. Education, part of education is what we're doing here. The Real Estate Commission offers education to soon-to-be brokers. And once you are licensed, the Real Estate Commission also helps educate the general public. So they help provide information. In just a few weeks, we'll look at the Real Estate Commission's website. You can check it out after class, beforehand if you want, but we'll ncrec.gov, or if you just Google North Carolina Real Estate Commission, it'll come up. But they have information, good information on their website to help educate the public, help navigate the public through the buying or selling or leasing process. The other refers to maybe the zoning boards, zoning regulations. Again, we'll talk about zoning in Unit 6. And then lastly, we have professional organizations. We have several tiers. Have you guys ever heard of NAR or the National Association of Realtors? Have you heard of a realtor? When you get your license, you become a broker. Once you're a broker, you can go on to the next step and become a realtor. And there's different levels of that organization. There's the national level that makes you a realtor. There's the state level. The North Carolina Association of Realtors, for example, provides us the pre-printed forms that we're allowed to use. Part of this class is looking at those forms, talking about how we can use those forms. And then you have the local level. So for example, we have the Winston-Salem Board of Realtors, the High Point Board of Realtors, the Greensboro Board of Realtors. You will join whatever local association your firm is a member of. So where's your firm located? Charlotte, Raleigh. So there's different tiers of professional organization, trade groups. Give me 1 second. I always got to make sure I say this right because I've been known to mess it up. So let me think for 1 second. All realtors are brokers, but not all brokers are realtors. Let me see if I can't do that again. All realtors are brokers, but not all brokers are realtors. So again, you get your license, you're a broker. You can take that brokerage to the next level and become a realtor by joining the professional organizations. We're going to talk a little bit more about these as we go, but once you guys start interviewing firms, they're going to be the ones to help fill you in on that. The dues, because all local have different dues and everything. So I'll let your future firms discuss all that with you. How we use real property. Well, we can use it for housing, for residential. We can use it for commercial. There's all sorts of commercial use, business, retail, office space. There's industrial use, your warehouses and your factories. There's agricultural use, your farms. And then there's special purpose. The special purpose, think churches, schools, libraries, cemeteries. Once you get your North Carolina real estate license, you are welcome to do business with any type of property as long as it's located in the state of North Carolina. It's not where you're standing, it's where the property is located. You may choose to do residential, you may choose to do commercial. There's one license that covers it all. Now, I don't think you guys should run out there and tackle the state of North Carolina. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But your license is good for all properties. There's only one license in this state. It's good for all properties located in the state of North Carolina. As we've mentioned, real estate is a market. With markets come fluctuations. Economics 101 talks about supply and demand. Basic economics says when supply is high, demand is low. As demand goes up, supply goes down. That point in the middle is called equilibrium. There's your economic lesson for the day. Various things that affect supply. Well, the labor force and construction costs. Shortage of labor in this market, we're experiencing a shortage of supplies, shortage of materials. Government controls and finance policies affect the supply of real estate. If we're going to make a change to the zoning or a change to the local taxes, that could affect the supply. Things that affect the demand, population. Some areas are seeing a growth in population, other areas are seeing a decline. Demographics affects demand. Our household dynamics are changing, they're evolving. We have households with single parents, we have households with adult children living at home or moving back home with their parents. We have households with parents moving in with their adult children. Our demographics, what's under our roof, is constantly changing. And another thing that affects demand is employment and wage levels. As companies come and go, announce their opening and closing, it absolutely affects the demand. Where are my Kernersville people? I had a couple of you from Kernersville, a few of you. You guys remember, and I don't know, time gets away from me. Remember, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, Caterpillar announced that they were opening a major plant in Kernersville. What do you think happened to the Kernersville real estate market when Caterpillar announced that they were coming? What do you think happened to demand? That's right. It flew up, didn't it? Because everybody had moved to Kernersville for a job. Now flip that coin. Do my Kernersville people remember when Dell shut their doors? When Dell announced they were closing that plant? Again, I ask you, what do you think happened to the demand? It went the other way, didn't it? It tanked. So employment and wage levels affected by demand. So here's the deal with real estate and supply and demand. We don't run around talking about supply and demand in real estate. What we talk about are buyers markets and sellers markets. Right now, we are in a big time sellers market because demand is really high and supply is really low. If you're familiar with the current market, our biggest struggle right now is low inventory. I don't have enough product for all the buyers out there. So it's a seller's market because demand is very high, supply is very low. As I mentioned, that pendulum will swing back and one day we'll be in a buyer's market. And if we're in a buyer's market, now supply is up and demand is low. So you're not going to hear a bunch of real estate agents sitting around talking about supply and demand. What we refer to is buyer's market and seller's market. Any questions or comments? Yeah, the sellers are loving life right now, assuming they have somewhere to go. You got to have a plan in this market.
I just want to know what page we're on directly.
We are on 11 to 14.
So we're still on page 11.
Actually, supply and demand, we're on 12.
Okay.
We
thank
talked
you.
about factors affecting supply on 12 and 13. And then factors affecting demand on page 14.
So basically the supply and demand and the seller and buyer market go hand in hand together.
Absolutely, they do. Absolutely. It's about the product, the inventory, and the demand for it. Other questions or comments?
Julie, there was,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me? Okay. There was a house on Zillow that someone had purchased it for 160, and then someone moved in and they're selling the house now for like 185. And that's
Sounds
because
about
they,
right.
right?
Because what?
That's because it's a seller's market, right? The price,
Abs-
they know that there's people, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Buyers are driving up
questioning that.
prices right now. Most sellers, not all, but most sellers are pricing, let's just for now say pricing right. Buyers are coming in, you get multiple buyers and they're helping to drive these prices up. I'll give you guys an example real quick. Somebody in my real estate firm, my sales firm, had a listing a couple weeks ago. We listed it on Friday. We went under contract on Sunday. So in 2 days, that's the only opportunity the buyers had. Within those 2 days, we had, I don't know how many showings, but I know they were booked back to back from 9 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night showings. Those 2 days produced 45 offers. Do you guys hear what I just said? In 2 days, we got 45 offers. Is that not a high demand? There's a high demand right now, and there was only one product. Of those 45 offers, how many offers could the sellers accept? Just one. That means the other 44 are back out looking again. You guys with me? That's what's going on right now. I don't know if you guys saw, you may want to go to YouTube after class and find the video, but there was a video that was released a couple weeks ago from a house in Raleigh, and it was insane. I mean, people were hanging out on the front yard, people were parked up and down the street around the cul-de-sac. And that's not just specific to Raleigh. That's absolutely what's going on in this market right now. Crazy times in this market right now.
I was gonna say, I saw that. I just happened to come across it. And they were
And
saying like the neighbors were like, what is going on in our neighborhood?
Yeah.
Because
If
all
I
the
were a neighbor, I'd
cars.
be sitting out in the front yard with my popcorn watching the show, because I'm sure that's exactly what they had, was a nice show. And like I said, guys, that's not just specific to Raleigh. That's going on everywhere. But this is not always the market we're going to be in. That pendulum is going to come back. And one day, I don't know when, but one day we're going to see a turn and we're going to be back in a buyer's market. And that's why I think it's so important that we understand that real estate is a market. It fluctuates. Remember, I told you guys I've been around for 20 years. I was here in the housing market crash. I survived real estate in the housing market crash. That point, it was a big time buyer's market. It swung back and now we're here. And that's what real estate does. That pendulum is constantly moving, sometimes slower than others. Well, guess what? We have successfully made it through Unit 1. At the end of each unit, I like to remind you guys of a couple things. If you will, turn with me to page 1. Let's go back to the beginning. Page 1 has some key terms. Kind of use this as a guide. Do you know what that word means? If not, maybe make a flashcard on it. Maybe put it down. The repetition of writing helps it stick. At the end of each unit, I remind you, in this case, on pages 15 and 16, there's a key point review. This is a nice review of the unit we just covered. I like to use the key point review as a checklist. Go through the key point review. I know what this means. I know what that means. I don't know what this means. Let's go back to the recording or back to the book. Kind of use it as a guide. And then the end of each unit also has a student quiz. So for Unit 1, our student quiz is 17 and 18. And this is where we're going to look on Thursday when we meet. Help you guys interpret some of these test questions, hopefully help get you off to a good start. So Unit 1 is our warm-up. Again, if you're going to have a test question on Unit 1, I haven't covered it yet. So a lot of Unit 1, we're going to get into more detail in further units. Questions, comments, concerns? So far, so good. All right, you guys feel warmed up? Because unit 2 ain't no unit 1. So I hope you're warmed up and ready to go. So let's go ahead and take our break. And we come back, we're gonna jump right into unit 2. I don't know about you guys, but I'm realizing as I wander around on break that not all my clocks have changed yet. So I think that's another good reason to have the 10-minute timer so I know where I'm supposed to be and when. I'll change my clocks this afternoon. All right. Are we back? Cameras are on. Look up. Do you see the light? Look for the light. Don't go into the light, but look for the light. So I am going to take attendance. And as we mentioned, if you looked ahead, I appreciate that. I hope you continue that habit. If you didn't, then you still got time to get caught up. Just don't let it get too far away from you. Unit 2, we start with introducing some different things, some things that might be new. And if you're just coming back, well, I've already taken attendance, so please tell me in a private chat that you're back so I can make sure to count you present. If you're just joining us, please tell me in a private chat that you're here so I know to count you present. So Unit 2, we're getting into property ownership and interests. And that's okay. If you're not sure, better to send me a message than not. So if you're not sure you made attendance, I try to make a big deal about attendance, so you know. Cameras on. When you're back. So in Unit 2, absolutely, Stephanie. In Unit 2, we're going to talk about the concepts of real property and personal property a little bit more. We're going to look into these topics that we met in Unit 1 a little bit further. We are going to talk about freehold estates. If I didn't see you before, I see you now. So thank you for letting me know in the chat, just in case. Better safe than sorry, right? We're going to talk about something called estate. Specifically, we're going to talk about something called a freehold estate. We're going to distinguish between, there's different forms of ownership. There's single ownership, there's concurrent forms of ownership, and there's some common interest communities. So Unit 2 is a, like I said, we're just throwing you in the deep end. Unit 2 is a pretty deep unit, and we only go forward from here. So y'all remember way back in Unit 1, and we talked about real property. And we said land is the surface rights. It includes everything above it known as the air rights and everything below it known as the subsurface rights. Land is everything attached by nature. When man adds to land, we have real estate. When you add a physical improvement, we have real estate. And then when we add an owner's interests and owner's rights, then we have real property. So what we're going to do now is talk about the bundle of legal rights. What are the rights that come with ownership? And one thing I think you can do to help yourself remember bundle of legal rights is to think of deep sea. The rights can be described as these different twigs. So there's a pretty interesting story in your book. I'll let you read it outside of class if you haven't yet. But how we came to be the bundle of legal rights. There was a time in our history where the majority of us did not know how to read or write. We couldn't even sign our own name to sign a deed to purchase property. So one way that we could show that we own property is by being presented with twigs from the land, twigs from the property. And those twigs represented our ownership rights, our bundle of legal rights. Your first twig is your disposition twig. As the owner of record, you have the right to dispose of the property. You have the right to sell it. You have the right to give it away if you wish. you have the right to dispose. Our first E twig is our enjoyment twig. You have the right to use your property in any legal manner that you wish. We're going to talk about some of those laws when we get into Unit 6, for example, zoning, restrictive covenants. But as long as it's in the confine of the law, you have the right to enjoy your property however you wish. Your second E twig is your exclusion twig. When you see exclusion, think of a no trespassing sign. It's your property. You have the right to say who you don't want to come on your land. Your P twig, your possession twig, is the opposite of exclusion. If exclusion tells you have the right to say who can't come on the land, then possession says you have the right to say who can come on your land. The possession twig is the right to be there. It's the right to occupy it. And then our C twig is our control twig. Your control twig says that you have the right to determine the use of the property. Do you want to profit from the property? Do you want to let a renter live on your property? Do you want to farm your property and make money from the crops? Again, as long as you're in the confines of the law. I think it's important that we know that our bundle of legal rights can be unbundled. So for example, if you allow a renter, a tenant, to live on your property in exchange for rent, you've given up your possession twig. You've given up your control twig. You've given up your exclusion twig. You're now sharing this bundle of legal rights with the person that you allow to live there in exchange for rent. Unit 11 is dedicated to the landlord-tenant relationship. So we'll talk about the laws that regulate tenants. That's a combination of tenants and landlords. See what I did there? It's just easier to say one word sometimes. The relationship between landlords and tenants. So our bundle of legal rights tells us our rights of ownership. Y'all ready for your first yellow star and your first real estate word? Oh, this is exciting. Everybody ready? Hang on. Here you go. In real estate, we talk about something called appurtenance. If something is appurtenant, it runs with the land. It's transferred from one owner to the next. When you purchase a property, it comes with certain appurtenances. Those rights, those privileges are transferred. You may hear in real estate, we say they're conveyed. You convey property from one owner to the next. We're getting ready to talk about your subsurface rights, air rights, and water rights. For your exam, I love it. Everybody perks up when I say, huh, what? For your exam, the Real Estate Commission says that we need to consider improvements as appurtenant. So if there's a structure, it's going to convey to the next owner. If there's a fence, if there's a garage, if there's a shed, sidewalks, improvements are appurtenant, they're going to convey. First big word. Everybody do okay? So far, so good? Okay. Before we talk about your rights, let's just make sure we're good. There is a distinction between improved land and improved lot. Now, a lot of times we use them interchangeably, but there is a distinction. The improved land is a land with structure. So it's been built on, there's a home or a dwelling or a commercial building. The improved lot Doesn't have a structure on it yet, but it has the basic services. So it has been hooked up for electrical, for plumbing, Google fiber optics, the basic services necessary to build on it. Again, we tend to use them interchangeably. But remember, either way, for your exam, the Real Estate Commission says improvements are appurtenant. So if there's not a home on it yet, but it's been plumbed, that plumbing is appurtenant. It runs with the land.
Could you go back to the peer review, the appurtenance note? Thank you.
So let's talk about your different rights. First off, let's talk about your subsurface rights. Subsurface rights refer to minerals and oils and gases under the surface. As the owner of property, you have rights to the subsurface. But those rights can be severed, which means somebody else can come in and purchase or rent the rights to those minerals or those oils or those gases. Think about like in Texas, we have oil. The people that live on that land don't have rights to that oil. They've been severed. Think about in West Virginia, our coal mines. We don't have rights to those coal mines. They've been severed. Coming sooner than what we're ready for, I think, in North Carolina. Have you guys ever heard about fracking? You won't have those rights to those gases under your land. Somebody will have the right to purchase, or will purchase and have the right to use those gases. Funnily enough, I actually have a form. We're going to look at it in Unit 8, so you don't need to worry about it right now. But there's a form that's a seller disclosure. The seller has to disclose to prospective buyers if they have or intend to sever their subsurface rights. And that form is referred to as the mineral and oil and gas rights. And whether or not the seller has severed those rights or they intend to, has to be disclosed to buyers. So again, that's something for us to look forward to in Unit 8. Unit 8, we talk specifically about working with buyers. I'm sorry, sellers and buyers, both. So our subsurface rights can be severed. We also have air rights. Remember, as an owner, you own air up to the heavens, up into infinity. But those air rights can also be severed. Anybody live around PTI Airport? This is the map you're looking at here. Anybody live around PTI? If you live around an airport, are you able to stop a plane from flying over your home? No, probably not, right? Why are they allowed to fly over your home? Because the airport has severed their air rights. They went to a court, they had a judge rule that their flight pattern can go over your property. Those rights have been severed. You're not going to be, well, I mean, I guess you can, but it's not going to do any good. You're not going to be able to stand in your front yard with a sign that says, please don't fly over my house. It's not going to matter what you think, right? They have permission via the courts. So subsurface rights can be severed. Air rights can be severed. We also have water rights that cannot be severed. Thank you. Water rights cannot be severed. And when we talk about water rights, we're talking about properties that are adjacent to some kind of body of water. You may or may not have rights to that body of water that you live on. There's a couple different types of water rights. The first type of water rights are referred to as riparian. Riparian rights do not have a tide. No tide. So think creeks, streams, lakes, ponds, rivers. There are two types of riparian water rights. The first type of riparian water rights are bodies of water that are not navigable. By not navigable, we mean you can't get a boat up or down. So think stream, creek. If your property is adjacent to a non-navigable body of water, you and the person on the other side of the stream own land to the center of the stream. You share the ownership of that land. So lot A owes to the center, lot B owns to the center. If your property is adjacent to a body of water that is navigable, you own to the edge. So navigable river, lake, that's owned maybe by the state, maybe by the community where the water is located. With navigable bodies of water, think about a public street. If your home is adjacent to a public street, can you go out there and say, don't you drive your car down the street in front of my house? Can you control who drives up and down the street in front of your house? No. Same thing with a navigable river. Maybe the river or lake will allow you to have a boat in it. Maybe they'll allow you to put a dock up. But you need to understand your dock is in their water. They're allowing you to put that dock up. So riparian rights are no tide, can be non-navigable or navigable. Again, whether or not you can get a boat down them or not. The other type of water rights that we have are littoral rights. Littoral rights are bodies of water with a tide. So now we're down east, our ocean, the Sound. Properties that are adjacent to bodies of water with a tide. Owners own to the average high tide mark. Whatever the average high tide mark is your land. High tide to low tide, known as the foreshore, is owned by the state of North Carolina. In most places, they allow us to walk up and down the beach, swim in the ocean. They allow us on the foreshore. Once you get out past low tide, it's going to be government owned until you get into international waters. So how that's regulated. So riparian rights are bodies of water with no tide. Littoral rights are bodies of water with a tide. Water rights cannot be severed.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
If let's say you have a neighborhood, like a private community that has a lake as one of their features,
Mhm.
man-made or what have you. And it's
Mhm.
navigable to a degree, like canoes or a small fishing boat or something. Being that it would be private versus public, does that still would not have any effect, would it, on the riparian rights? Would it would still just be to the edge of the property? Is that how
That's
that
correct.
works?
That's correct. So if the
Okay.
state or government doesn't own it, then it's gonna be like Ballew's Creek, for example. Up again,
Understood.
north of Kernersville, right? So it's still gonna have, your boundary is still gonna be the same. Ballew's Creek owns Ballew's Creek. Ballew's Creek allows residents to put a dock in there. You may go to some bodies of water, they don't let you put a dock in. They're gonna have covenants, they're gonna have
Like
regulations.
an HOA would
Exactly,
dictate whether you could have a pier or, okay,
exactly.
thank you.
Riparian rights stay the same. You only own to the edge of the water. If the
Thank you.
body allows you to put a dock in, that's up to them. Yep. Okay. Water rights, subsurface rights, and air rights. There's one other water right term. We don't do this in North Carolina. We see this out west. Why are we talking about it? Well, because it's mentioned in the syllabus. So if you see this test question, it's going to be on the national section. You won't find it in the state specific section. And out west, they handle their water rights a little bit differently. Out west, they use something called Doctrine of Prior Appropriation. And with Doctrine of Prior Appropriation, almost think of it as a first come, first served basis. The first one to show up and say, hey, I'm gonna have a right to use this property is the one that gets the right. You, as the person that lives adjacent to the body of water, may not be allowed to access it. So again, out west, not here. If you see this, it'll be a national section, not state. Some other water rights, some terms, just to make sure that we have an understanding on. Accretion is gradual increase in land from the deposit of soil by water. So as water flows, it leaves soil in places. And once you accumulate soil, you're looking at accretion. Relection is the increase in land when water recedes. So as water goes down, you see more and more land. That's relection. Erosion is the gradual wearing away of land caused by flowing water. And then avulsion is just a sudden act of nature. So think like a mudslide or something. Again, just some basic understanding. These water rights, these terms affect the boundaries. And boundaries on waters can change. Some gradually over time, some abruptly. We also have support rights. And there are two types of support rights. There's lateral support, which means your neighbor, the property adjacent to you, can't dig, for example, in a way that affects your support. You have lateral support, you have rights to have your properties supported. And then subjacent is any of the rights under the surface. Severing those subsurface rights, again, can't affect how you can't affect your land. Let's go back to our coal mines in West Virginia, for example. Those coal mines are miles under the surface, miles under the surface. They can dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, or mine and mine and mine, I guess is the more appropriate. And they don't have to worry about the house falling in. It's still supported underneath. So lateral is beside, subjacent is underneath. Okay, questions about our rights?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can our subsurface water rights be severed as well?
Well, water rights cannot be severed.
Okay, so even the
So-
water
So if
underground,
there's water under the ground, that's a really good question. But it's still the water, right? So
Okay.
when we talk about our subsurface rights, we're referring to the things that we can mine, right?
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
great question, though. Absolutely. Okay. So we mentioned back in Unit 1, we mentioned personal property and real property. Let's have a more thorough conversation about personal property and real property. Remember, we said real property is anything that's attached to the ground, may that be by nature or by man. Personal property then is just anything that's not real property. The distinguishing characteristic is mobility. Yep. Personal property may also be known as personality or chattel. One thing that we like to in real estate is to have several different words that mean the same thing. So we use lots of AKAs, also known as. Personal property is governed by Uniform Commercial Code. We're going to talk about Uniform Commercial Code in just a second.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So later on in I think Unit 3, it discussed some things like this, where like it comes with the microwave in the stove thing. But if you could remove it, would it be considered real property? Because I remember it
Yeah.
said if it's by credit paying, you can take it, but if it's not being paid by credit, it stays with the property.
Absolutely. And hang on to that question because we're getting ready to address that. So hang on to that for just 1 minute and we'll get there. Thank you. Personal property and real property. Let's talk about plants first. There's 2 types of plants, fructose naturals and fructose industrials. Fructose naturals don't require annual cultivation. There are bushes, our shrubs, our trees, the things that we plant and they're there forever. Those are considered real property. RP is real property. Real property conveys, unless it's excluded. We'll talk about that in just a second. So bushes, shrubs, the trees, they're pertinent. What's a pertinent mean? Runs with the land. It's going to convey, unless excluded. Fruits of the industry are emblements. These are our annual crops, the things that we have to plant and harvest every year. Corn, wheat, soy. Whether or not they're personal property or real property depends. If it's an owner, farmer, and that owner sells their property, that is considered real property. So it will convey in the sale. If it's a tenant farmer, this year's crops are considered personal property. So if a tenant farmer plants crops and then their lease runs out and they move, the tenant farmer can come back on the land, harvest this year's crop because it's personal property. Now they can't keep planting. They can just come back and get this year's crop. So if it's a tenant, it's personal property. If it's an owner, it's real property.
Question.
Yeah.
If it's an owner that has a crop coming in and they sell, I read over, does the owner still have the rights to come back and get that crop? Because
Not
they're an
unless
owner
arrangements are made otherwise. So it's
in
real
the
property.
contract.
That's right.
Okay,
So unless,
thank you.
let's go ahead and get this out in the open right now, you guys. Y'all may want to write this down. The parties to the contract can agree to whatever they want to.
Okay.
So unless agreed otherwise, it's considered real property, which means that owner doesn't have rights to come back and harvest those crops.
Okay.
Unless the parties agree otherwise.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm going back to the fruit test, natural. That is a real property example.
Say it again.
The first portion with the fruits of nature, you described as real property.
That's real
Okay.
property, correct. Yep, yep,
Thank
RP and
you.
PP. Real property and personal property. Yes, ma'am, thank you. I try to cut back on words when I can. Another thing you guys are gonna learn pretty quickly about real estate, by golly, if we can make an acronym out of it, we're going to. We love our acronyms. I'm telling you, it's a whole new language, a whole new vocabulary, a whole new jargon.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So for the crop things, when you said the parties get to do like basically decide anything, say like somehow they bought the farmland and then they happen to sell it to someone else, does the person with the rights to the crops get to come back even though it's a different person?
If it's a lease, so if it's a tenant farmer, they can come back and harvest their crops. But if it's a tenant or a farmer owner, unless the parties agree otherwise, then it's real property. So it depends on who we're talking about. Are we talking about an owner farmer or a tenant farmer? The question that came up a few minutes ago, it was kind of implied that real property can become personal property can become real property. You guys got some kind of fixture in your room right now, I got a ceiling fan, for example. You guys got something, if you look up, you got something. My ceiling fan is attached in a way that it's not falling on my head. Right now, that ceiling fan is considered a fixture. Now we're getting ready to talk all about fixtures in just a second. But what if I wake up one day and I decide I don't like that ceiling fan anymore? Can I take it down? Can I remove it? Yeah. And then I can go to Lowe's and I can buy another one and I can carry it in. It's in a box and I can carry it in and I can affix the new ceiling fan in a way that it's not going to fall on my head. So when we take fixtures and we convert them from real property to personal property or personal property to real property, we have words to know with this. If you sever something, you've converted it from real property to personal property. You have severed it from the structure. So I wake up one day, I say, nah, I don't like that ceiling fan anymore. I can sever it. I can remove it. I go to Lowe's, I buy a new ceiling fan, I attach it, I annex it in a way where I've converted it from personal property to real property. The old saying with fixtures, if it's nailed, screwed, or glued, or welded or bolted, It is attached, it is annexed in a way. It could come down. It may damage, I may damage the ceiling. I hope I don't. I'm an amateur at that, so I might. But I can remove it, I can detach it, I can sever it, or I can attach it, I can annex it. I can attach it in a way that it's meant to be permanent. Y'all ready for your first red star? Boy, I'm not kidding on day one, am I? Day one, red star, thorough understanding of a fixture. Fixture is an item that was once personal property, but has been converted to real property by annexation. It's been attached in a way that it's meant to be permanent. If you guys will, look with me in your book, pages 26 to 27. When we get into unit 10, we're going to look at our standard offer to purchase and contract. And when we look at our standard offer to purchase and contract, it provides us with a list of things that the contract determines as fixtures. Can a fixture be excluded? You shake your head, yes or no. Can a fixture be excluded from the contract? Could a seller take a fixture? Yeah, if the parties agree. That's the key. The parties have to agree. If you're using a different contract, this fixture list might look a little bit differently. But this just kind of gives you an idea. These are things, guys, I've always heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've always heard that a fixture winds up in this list as a result of a court case. So a buyer buys a house, they show up after closing and they're looking for something on page 26, 27, it's gone. They take the seller to court, the judge rules that it's a fixture, and lo and behold, we have a new fixture in our offer to purchase and contract. It's also worth mentioning that this exact same list shows up in our listing agreements. So when we're entering into an agreement to sell somebody's house, we have this fixture list. Now we're going to talk about our agency agreements in Unit 8. But this gives me the opportunity when I'm at a listing appointment, I can share this list with my seller and I can say, is there anything on this list you want to take with you? And the seller says, well, I'll look it over tonight before I go to bed. You know what? I'm actually a pretty patient person. I can sit here for 4 minutes while you look at this, because if you're taking anything, we need to talk about it right now. In a perfect world, do we live in a perfect world? Everybody shake your head no. In a perfect world, if the seller's going to take any of the fixtures, we're going to have them take it down and replace it before I ever list their property for sale, before it ever hits Zillow, before a buyer ever sees it. However, as we just said, this isn't a perfect world. What if your seller looks at you and says, that chandelier in the dining room is grandma's antique chandelier, and I'm going to take it with me. Hey, I get it. Grandma's antique chandelier, you should take it with you. And you ask the seller if they can take it down and replace it before you list the property. And the seller says, no, I've never not eaten a meal under grandma's antique chandelier, and I don't plan on starting it now. I will take it down when I move out. Fantastic. It's now my job as the listing agent to let every single buyer know that when they buy that house, it's not going to convey with grandma's antique chandelier. I have a duty, I have a responsibility to let everybody know that this chandelier will not convey. It's going to be an exclusion. When the seller takes it down, regardless, before I list it or before they move out, they need to replace it with something that looks comparable in that space. In other words, don't leave me with a light bulb on a string and say, here you go, right? Go to Lowe's, get something that looks nice in that space. At least repair the hole where it was. Again, when we look at our contract in Unit 10, there's actually verbiage in the contract that says the seller is responsible for repairing any damage caused removing that fixture. So it's really important that we have this discussion with sellers. And if there's anything that they're gonna take and they won't take before we list, we need to make sure that buyers understand. And guys, buyers can get so petty. You're gonna hear stuff like, well, I would have bought that house if it came with the chandelier, but since it doesn't come with the chandelier, I'm not gonna buy the house, right? Right? Welcome to buyers. That's so it's almost best what buyers don't see, they never know about, right? But if they do see it, we need to make sure they understand that it's not included. We talked about our, let's see, where is it on here? Landscaping and outdoor trees and plants, except in movable containers. We talked about our bushes and our trees. What if a seller has a dogwood in the ground that they planted when little Johnny was born, and they watch the dogwood and little Johnny grow together? Can they take that dogwood with them? Of course. If they won't take it before we list, we need to exclude it. We need to make sure that when a buyer buys, they know that that dogwood will not be in the front yard. There's one thing not on this list that tends to blow people's mind. Are you missing something? Is there something not on here that you're thinking, well, gee, where is this one appliance? I'll give you a hint.
Is it
It's
a
hard to see
refrigerator?
something you're not looking for. There you go. Defrigerator. Defrigerator is not considered a fixture. The refrigerator is considered personal property unless it's built in. Obviously, a built-in refrigerator is considered a fixture. But if it's just a standalone fridge, it's considered personal property. And it's probably hands down the #1 negotiated personal property item. As Maria said, the second negotiated personal property item is the washer and dryer. Remember what we just said, you guys, though. The parties to the contract can agree to whatever they want. So can we negotiate? Can we negotiate the inclusion of the refrigerator and the washer and dryer? Absolutely, if the parties agree to it. I always, in listing appointments, I always ask if the sellers plan on leaving the fridge, because I know when buyers see it. I know when buyers come to my open house, they're going to want to know, does the fridge stay? #1 question you're going to get with a new listing, I guarantee you, does the fridge stay? So go ahead and have this conversation up front, be prepared for it. The stove is actually considered a fixture. The stove is over on, let's see. Yeah, there it is. The second one down on page 26. So the stove is going to be considered. Now, I don't need you guys to memorize this list, but I do think it's helpful for you guys to understand, again, when you're using our standard offer to purchase and contract, which we're going to talk about in Unit 10, this is the one that we use the most often. So when you're using this form, this contract, these things are considered fixtures and will stay unless the parties agree otherwise. A question came in, if buyer does not want the fridge or the washer dryer, is the seller responsible to remove them? Yes, because it's personal property and the seller is to take personal property with them. I had a listing a couple years ago and the guy said, I don't want the fridge, I want to leave the fridge. I said, great. Buyer came in, offer came in, fridge wasn't mentioned. I called the buyer's agent. I said, hey, do you guys not want the fridge? And they said, no, they have their own. They don't, it's better. They don't want his. And I said, great. So I called my seller back. I said, they don't want your fridge. He said, what do I do with it? And I said, I don't really care, but you got to get it out of here. because if they wanted it, they would have asked for it. I think he ended up putting on Craigslist and getting $50 for it or something. You know, it's better than nothing, right? But you're absolutely right, Maria. If we don't include it, the seller is responsible for taking all personal property when they go. And again, we'll get into more conversation in that when we get into our offer to purchase and contract.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What happens if the seller doesn't take their personal property? For example, like my parents just bought a house and they had a fountain and a bunch of like plants and stuff, but the previous owner said that they didn't want to keep the fountain, and my mom hates it, but they left it. What happens with that?
We're going to talk, the buyer has some options. We're going to talk about that when we get into contract law. But yeah, if the seller leaves and the buyer signs, it's now the buyers. We'll call them the new owner at this point. So do they want to dispose of it and remove it? Do they want to take it out back and beat it up with the crowbar? That they can, right? That's their thing. So yeah, once a buyer buys, they get everything in the property. And again, we'll get more into that in contract law. Units 9 and 10 are dedicated to our contract. Okay. So remember I just said something about going to court over fixtures? This happens a lot. This happens a lot. And if the parties have to go to court to determine if something is a fixture or not, a fixture is meant to stay, personal property is meant to go. So if we have to go to court over this, the judge is now involved. And the judge is going to use something called the total circumstance test. Guys, bottom line, am I talking about fixtures, personal property, no matter what I'm talking about? If the parties can't agree to agree, the judge will determine for them. You and I are not attorneys. Unless you are, please tell me if you're an attorney. I would love to have an attorney in pre-licensing. But if the parties can't agree to agree, the judge will determine for them. And that does apply for fixtures. And the judge is going to apply something called the total circumstance test. The judge is going to ask a series of questions for the judge to determine if it's a fixture or personal property. The parties can't agree to agree, so they're going to let the judge decide, does this stay or does this go? And to help us remember the questions that the judge will ask to determine if it's a fixture or personal property, we can think of as IRMA. I'm on page, let's see, I'm back on page 25. Can you guys not see my page numbers? Do you guys see these down here? Some of you can, some of you can't. Isn't Zoom wonderful?
No, we can't see him. I can't see him.
Okay, I think some of you can, some of you can't. So I'll try to do better to let you know what page we're on. Thank you. So page 25. And the series of questions that the judge is going to ask is IRMA. They're going to ask the intent of the annexer. Who is the person that installed it? Is it an owner or is it a tenant? Determining on who the person is, and I'm sorry, I skipped ahead one. Intent of the annexer. When you think of intent, think of how permanent did they mean it to be? Is this something you can remove easily, or is it attached in such a way that is going to damage the property by removing it? The judge is going to ask the relationship of the annexer. Now here's our owner and here's our tenant. Who is the person that annexed it? Could we all agree that a tenant may not mean for it to last forever, whereas an owner might? So who's the relationship of the person? The method. Again, how permanent are we talking? Nailed, screwed, glued, can come undone. It's hard to undo, bolt and weld. And then the adaptation to real estate. You ever see, I'm sure lots of you like to look at like Zillow and realtor.com and look at property. You guys like to do that yet? You will before it's over, I promise. You ever see a home that it talks about custom built this and custom design this and custom built that? The adaptation to real estate, we're adapting it to the property.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does it speak of the annexer in the book?
I'm sorry.
You're speaking about the annexation,
Mhm.
is this, can we find this in the book?
We define that you can find that back on page 25. So we talked about annexation and severance. So the
Okay,
bottom of
cool.
24 to the top of page 25. Yep.
Thank you.
So let's look at a picture. You guys like pictures? I like pictures. This is a listing I had a couple years ago. This was a fantastic listing. I wish I had this listing in this market. I would have gotten my sellers a lot more money for it. But this home was, you talk about meticulously maintained. Y'all, you could eat off the basement floor if you really wanted to of this house. It was nice. And they just didn't clean to get ready for me to come over. It was nice. So this is a picture of the kitchen. Why don't you guys tell me in the chat, what are some things that you see that are fixtures? Tell me in the chat some things that you see will stay when they buy. The island, yep, I'll talk about that in a second. Good point. The microwave, because it's built in, cabinet, stove, water fixtures, faucets, countertops, lights, blinds, absolutely. The lamps, the lights, the sink, the backsplash tile. Ooh, the faucet and the soap dispenser. Look at you go. Ceiling lamps, the doors. Yeah, we got a door out to the garage right there. The cabinets, the under cabinet lighting. Look at you guys go. The stove, because our fixture list mentions that the stove will stay. As I mentioned, this microwave is going to stay because it's built in. What if this microwave was sitting on the counter? Now it's personal property, right? That's the difference, whether or not it's attached or not. A couple of you mentioned the island. If it's an island on wheels, then it's going to go, right? But this island, you guys see the outlet right here? It's permanently attached. It's not going anywhere. Now, can the stools go unless we agree otherwise? Of course, but the island. So the dishwasher, yep, that's, golly, you guys can see better than I can. The dishwasher right over here, you can see the sliver of it. You actually had the fridge over in this area, but we know the fridge wouldn't stay unless otherwise. Somebody else mentioned the shade, the blinds. Curtain rods stay, the draperies do not. Blinds stay, right? Because those are the things that are attached. But if you have curtains, the fabric can go. It's the rod that's attached. Can you guys see where we need to have an understanding when we're out? Do you think it's common for a buyer to walk in this kitchen and say, do I get the stove? Do I get the microwave? Do I get the island? Do you think that's a common conversation that buyers want to know what they
Yes.
get if they buy? Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's why it's important that in practice, remember your goals, don't put your cart in front of your horse. In practice, we need to be very familiar with the fixture list back on page 26 and 27. And we need to be prepared to identify, help the buyer identify, and the seller for that matter, what is considered a fixture and what is considered personal property. Questions? So let's go ahead and take, what time is it? It's 12 o'clock, goodness. Let's go ahead and take our last break. Let's take 10. When we come back, we're going to keep going in unit 2. All right. I promise for next class, I'll have a timer with a louder alarm that I can try to do better to get everybody's attention. It's pretty and wispy, but it doesn't get the point across that I want it to. So. All right. If we're back, cameras are on. Are we good for the last hour? How's everybody doing? Day one overall. How we doing? Good? Good, good, good. The question is, will you come back for day two? That's how I know. 2 thumbs up. I love it. Thank you. All right. So cameras are back on so we can take attendance. And they stay on, by the way. They're not just on for attendance. They stay on the whole time. Let's get back into unit 2. We're still talking about fixtures, but we need to talk about a different kind of fixture, or another kind of fixture, I guess I should say. So another kind of fixtures that we have are trade fixtures. Trade fixtures are fixtures that the commercial tenant can install to conduct their trade or their business, if you will. So the commercial tenant comes in, maybe it's a restaurant and they have kitchen equipment. Maybe it's a retail store and they have shelves and racks. The tenant farmer can come in, not the tenant farmer, just seeing if you guys are paying attention. The commercial tenant can come in, install their fixtures, and at the end of the lease, they can take their fixtures with them. So the commercial tenant is allowed to install the fixtures. They're considered the tenant's personal property. At the end of the lease, if they leave and they don't take them, then they become real property of the landlord, or if the parties don't come to some kind of other arrangement. The tenant is responsible for repairing any damage to the property caused by removing the fixtures. The tenant is responsible for repairing any damage to the property caused by removing the fixtures at the end of their lease. So let's look at a picture. This is a kitchen, a commercial kitchen. Presumably, for our example, this space was empty when the commercial tenant came in. They might have come in and installed, you see this big hood? That's hanging there, that's permanently attached. The range, the grill, the fryers are going to be attached so they don't topple over. Even the counters, whatever we have here, the cabinets, the shelves here, the shelf that this microwave is sitting on. If the commercial tenant came in and installed these things for the use to conduct their business, then the landlord will allow them to remove it at the end of the lease unless the parties agree otherwise. So trade fixtures are different. Like I said, the tenant has to fix, they got to repair this part of the ceiling or the wall or the floor if this is bolted to the floor. They have to repair the damage that they caused in removing their fixture.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Everything that you're doing pertaining to these slideshows, we can convert back to this as reference.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Everything that these slideshows, like notes and all these things, we can come back to as reference.
Absolutely. So, yep. So you got my PowerPoints and Learn Test Pass. You need to get registered, set up, and Learn Test Pass. And then remember, we're also recording. So once I get you guys, I'm going to create our YouTube channel like today. And when we come back together on Thursday, I'll give you our YouTube channel that you can go back and review. Absolutely. And to your point, repetition is the key, right? You're not going to hear it once and it click. So that's part of the reason why I highly encourage you guys to look ahead at the material before class. So you've at least exposed yourself to the words and then come to class and let us help you explain it better. So recordings, PowerPoints, absolutely. Okay. So those are trade fixtures. Over on page 28, which I reset my PowerPoint on break, so you may be able to see page numbers now. Maybe not. The quirkiness of Zoom. We also have agricultural fixtures, and these are items that are attached by the tenant farmer. Once they're attached by the tenant farmer, they become real property of the landlord. The tenant farmer cannot remove agricultural fixtures without special permission, unless the parties agree otherwise. So if the tenant farmer comes in and installs things to run their farm, those are now considered real property of the landlord, and they will stay at the end of the lease. Y'all ready to go? Oh, you guys like to go? Oh, I don't know about you guys, but I love goats. And whenever I see goats, I go, oh. So our goats, as you can see, this feeding trough clearly is attached in a way. It's in the ground, right? Because if it wasn't, the goat would jump on it and it would topple over. Same thing with this fence. So if the tenant farmer came in and installed the feeding trough in the fence, then the tenant farmer would have to leave those at the end of their lease unless arrangements were made otherwise. So we mentioned earlier the law that dictates personal property. And the law that dictates personal properties are North Carolina Uniform Commercial Code. And specifically, this law is dictating personal property that's financed. This is not you buying something on your credit card. This is you having a security agreement with whomever provided you with this water heater. You sign a security agreement. And the UCC, or the Uniform Commercial Code, says that an item is bought on credit and the creditor has a security agreement is considered personal property until it's paid in full. So in other words, you don't own it until you pay for it in full. This security agreement is probably recorded. So any buyer, we're going to talk about recordation and recording certain documents. The reason we record, we'll talk about it more in Unit 5. But the reason we record is to put notice to anybody with an interest in this property. Warning, if you buy this property, the water heater will not convey because it's not the owner's to sell. Again, in Unit 10, when we look at our offer to purchase and contract, we have a place to exclude leased items. We have a place to exclude items that are not owned. Make sure everybody's on the same page. So UCC applies to financed personal property.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the one from earlier about the stove and the credit, like this one. So what if it's a fixture, but since it's credit, it doesn't come with the house?
There you go. So the question is, does it stay? Well, the next question should be,
Yeah.
do you own it, right? Are you leasing it? And listing agents, these are conversations that we have with our sellers before we ever list the property. And we'll talk more about that conversation, but absolutely, a buyer deserves to know what they're buying. Can everybody agree with that? A buyer deserves to know what they're buying. And that's one thing we as listing agents want to do, is make sure we have a clear understanding from the seller. Is this yours to convey? Are you going to take this with you? Do you want to leave this? Once it's paid in full, by the way, now it's real property. Right? It's only personal property because you don't own it yet. You're still making payments on it.
So it does stay until it's fully paid
Once
off.
it's paid in full,
But
it's
if it's,
personal property. Mhm.
but if it's not paid in full,
Then it's personal property.
so does it like hold up the process? Or-
Mm-mm. Nope. Nope. We got verbiage all covered for this in our offer to purchase and contract.
Mm,
By the way, you guys just wait. Our offer to purchase and contract is 15 pages. So we have a lot to say in 15 pages. So we'll cover it. And if we don't, like I said, we have the judge that can help us help us determine.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So if basically, so if you buy some that's like built in like a microwave or something and everything, you don't pay for it, and it's not like paid in full, more of the story, like you have to take it with you and fit what you still have to fix, like
You're not taking it with you. It's not yours to take. So if you have if you're paying for a built-in microwave and you sell
Mhm.
your home, you have to convey that. You have to say, I can't take this. You can't have this. I can't have this until it's paid in full.
okay.
I have a question too. So
Yeah.
so about that. So say because I had my house on the market a couple months ago or in January, and like we were talking about earlier, I had 42 showings in one day that just happened. And I'm probably telling too much of my business. I owe 132 on my house and we got an offer for 210. I
Mhm.
got scared because of the seller market. I didn't want to buy, but I just bought like a brand new fridge. I did get it on credit. So if I sell that, that's where my confusion coming in. So if I sell my home, the refrigerator, well, it's personal property, but obviously that's personal property, but say a built-in dishwasher. If I just went and bought a $3,000 built-in dishwasher, but I sell my home and it's built in, how would that work? I would still own it even though I sold my house, or would we have to like, you get what I'm
You don't
saying?
own it until it's paid in full. It's somebody else's until it's paid in full. So
Right,
that would be
okay.
an agreement between you and the creditor.
Okay. So basically I could leave it there if I still pay for it, or I pay it
You
off.
can't
when I sell the
convey it
house.
if it's not yours.
Okay.
So if you're making payments on it, or if you're leasing it, it's not yours to give away.
So is that something that you could write into the offer to purchase as like a negotiating point that you could say,
Parties can agree. Well, except for that, I
Yeah.
guess, because it's not yours to negotiate.
right? So, yeah, I guess
Now,
that's.
could we transfer? Could we transfer this lease from the seller to the buyer? Well, that depends on the creditor. And that depends on your agreement with the creditor, if that can
And
be
that's what you mean.
transferable.
Okay,
Yep,
that's what you
that can
mean
be
by
transferable.
gives creditor a security agreement, because I was confused on what that meant, like giving the creditor a security agreement, who, that I'm buying
It's
the
an
house.
agreement to pay, and I'm gonna pay you until it's paid in full, and only when I paid
Yeah.
in full is it mine. Yep.
Or
And
we could do it. Oh, go ahead.
And it goes in the offer to purchase, or goes in the contract that would need to be
Mhm,
written
The
in.
offer to purchase and contract. Yep,
Can I add on to that?
please.
All right, so I'm just going off the example with the boiler heater. You're making payments on the boiler heater, right? And you basically saying if you're in the process of a contract, it's on a standstill until it's paid, basically.
If it's paid,
Okay, so I'm just giving an example. You need a new boiler heater, and that's going in line with the creditor situation. Until it's paid in full, it's in a standstill point with the contract, basically.
well, because it's not yours to negotiate. That's the thing. You can't negotiate the item if it's not yours. So this is why you have an agreement between the person that owns the water heater and you, right? And basically it says it's not mine until it's paid for.
So the
That's what
creditor,
the UCC does. The UCC is basically protecting the creditor from having the owner move
Mhm.
out with their water heater before it's paid in full.
gotcha.
So I don't know, we'll probably learn about this, or at closing, we could say that water heater that I still owe $2,000 on, I'm selling my house, but at closing, we could pay it off when we get our money. Could that happen?
Possibly.
Okay.
Or we can make arrangements, yeah. So maybe you just agree to pay it off and then you can convey it, or maybe you can transfer it from you to the new owner if the creditor will allow that. Okay. Let's talk about factory built or manufactured homes. Factory built or manufactured homes are built, there's something called HUD, Housing for Urban Development. Housing for Urban Development is HUD. HUD has standards on factory built manufactured homes. When it's personal property, it's titled and regulated by the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles. You have a VIN number, you have it registered. You have wheels, a hitch, you can hook it up and move it. When you remove the wheels and you put it on a permanent foundation and you cancel the title of the DMV, that manufactured home becomes real property. So does the manufactured home convey? Well, it depends. Does it have a VIN number? Is it titled? Is it on wheels? Or has the title been canceled? It's on a permanent foundation. So once again, personal property that can become real property. So HUD standards regulate our manufactured homes.
I had a question about this one too.
Mhm.
So for the concept of these, is it the same thing like the townhouse example that I given?
We're going to talk about timeshares.
No, not the timeshare, but like when you have it and it comes with the unit, and the unit's like you own.
Oh,
all
you
of
said a townhouse. All right, so we're going to talk about townhouses and condos. Yep, that's coming up.
Oh, but is it like the same concept as this?
No, because here we're talking about manufactured homes. So townhomes are different. We'll talk about those. If I don't get to those today, we won't get those today. So we'll see townhouses, condos, that kind of thing on Thursday.
Okay. And the other question is, how do you get the land? Like, you have the home, right? But how do you get the land?
For your manufactured home, either you own the land or you lease the land if it's still personal property. So you either own the land that you put it on, or maybe you lease the land. If you lease the land and you attach it, then it becomes real property. And real property is appurtenant, which means what? It runs with the land. So once you attach it, it becomes real property, it will convey.
Okay.
We also have modular housing. Modular housing is built to state building codes, not HUD codes, but state building codes. With modular housing, you're building large sections of the house offsite. You're building like a room at a time or a floor at a time offsite, and then you're bringing it on site to assemble it. Have you ever been driving down the highway and seen like half a house? The other half is somewhere else. It's either already there or it's on its way, right? So once you get to the destination, once it's assembled on site, it becomes real property. So modular housing, you're building it in sections, offsite, in a factory somewhere. They bring it on site, assemble it, then it becomes real property. Okay, so lots of things with real property and personal property. So let's switch gears just a bit and talk about estates. When it comes to estates, there's one word I want you guys to remember, to help you remember what an estate is. An estate is the interest that somebody has in a property. What is your interest in the property? An estate is referring to the amount and kind of interest that one person has. Is the degree, the quantity, the nature, the extent. An estate is an interest. What type of interest do you have in the property? And there are two different types of estates. One we're going to talk about today and Thursday. The other one we will get to. The two types of estates. There's an estate of ownership, also known as a freehold estate. There's an estate of possession, also called a leasehold estate. We will get to leasehold estates in Unit 11. So for right now, we're just going to focus on freehold, which is your ownership. What's your interest in the property? You own it. That's your interest. It's an interest of ownership. We can take freehold estates, and we're going to talk about all of these. We can take freehold estates and put them in two different categories. There's an estate of inheritance and an estate not of inheritance. If you look in your book on page 29, that nice picture you have there takes what you're looking at on the slide and it puts it in a picture. So freehold estates can be broken down into two different types of estates, one of inheritance and one not of inheritance. When does inheritance kick in? When the individual passes away, right? So with the freehold estates, we're saying either they can be inherited when the owner dies, or they can't be inherited when the owner dies. So let's talk about our different freehold estates, our different estates of ownership. And the first one we have is fee simple absolute. This is the highest form of ownership. There's no limitation on what you can do with your property as long as you're within the confines of the law. Nobody's allowed to break the law. This is the estate that we're going to deal with in real estate 99.9% of the time. Don't write that down. I just made that number up. But this is the estate that we deal with the majority of the time. The owner owns it fee simple absolute. There's no limitation on their ownership, and they have the right to convey it however they want. The other types of estates you may encounter, they're out there, but they're not as common. Guys, it's one thing that we understand early on and throughout your real estate career is that unless you are, we are not attorneys. I can't give legal advice. I can't offer my legal opinion. And the reason we talk about these rest of the types of estates is so when we know to have a little flag go up, and when our little flag goes up, we need to advise our clients to talk to an attorney. We are at no point expected to whip out our pre-licensing textbook and give advice based on what your book says on the different types of estates. So the reason we cover this, I'm teaching you just enough to be dangerous, some parts of this class. And the reason we go through this is so you know when to advise your clients to talk to an attorney. So fee simple absolute, highest form of ownership, what we see With fee simple absolute, there's no restriction on time or use. No restriction on time or use. We have freehold estates that have a restriction on use. Those are called fee simple defeasible, also known as a qualified fee estate. And what these estates say, you know the rules when you buy the property. They're deeded. They're in the deed. We're going to talk about the deed in Unit 5. You know the rules. If you break the rules, you lose the property. You know going into the purchase of this property that there's a restriction on how you can use the property. It's pretty simple. Break the rules, lose the property. There are two types of fee simple defeasible estates. The first type is a fee simple subject to condition subsequent. What this one says is that the owner can do whatever they want with the property, except for one thing. You can use it for however you want, except, for example, serving alcohol. If it's a fee simple defeasible, you have a restriction on serving alcohol. You do anything else. The moment you serve one beer, you've broken the rules and you lose the property. The grantor, we're going to define better in Unit 5. But for right now, let's just understand that the grantor is the person giving you the property. So if you serve one beer, you broke the rules. The person that gave you the property has the right to take you to court. And upon ruling, you lose the property. The property will go back to the person that gave it to you or their heirs if they're no longer with us. So fee simple subject to condition subsequent, you do whatever you want to, except this one thing. And you know that one thing, it was in the deed. You purchased it knowing you can't serve alcohol. It's a restriction on use.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Now, are we talking about, so this particular, so the state, is it a business and that we can't sell alcohol on the
Doesn't matter.
business, or it's a house?
Personal, business.
Wow,
It's,
really?
It's property. Yep.
Property.
Yep.
So if I invite you to my house and I serve you alcohol, I can
You broke
lose
the rules.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
But you knew this when you bought it.
Bought it. Right.
You knew that
Okay.
if we were going to drink, I'd have to come to your house, right? Or you'd
Right.
have to come to my house, right?
Yep.
Because,
Okay.
right? You knew this when you bought it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The other fee simple defeasible is called fee simple determinable. This one says you can only use the property for one thing. That's it. One thing, one purpose is the only reason you can use the property. So let's say, for example, it's deeded that you can only use the property for religious purposes. The moment you do something non-religious, you've broken the rules and you lose the property. In this case, though, the grantor doesn't have to take you to court. The person that gave you the property doesn't have to take you to court. It automatically goes back. If they're no longer with us, it'll go to their heirs. When you see determinable, see determined. The terms have already been determined. We don't need a judge to tell us. It's already been determined. The moment you do something on this property, non-religious, it comes back to the grantor or their heirs. You are buying the lot. You are purchasing with restrictions. And the fee simple defeasible has a restriction on how you can use the property. So subject to condition subsequent, whatever you want to, except this one purpose. Fee simple determinable, only one use, only one allowable purpose. So let's look at an example together. This might help. You guys see why I want you to call an attorney, by the way? I'm teaching, boy, didn't I just give you enough information to make you dangerous? So what are you going to do when you're working with a buyer or seller and it's not fee simple absolute? Your little flag's going to go up and you're going to say, Julie told me to call an attorney. Do what?
Yeah, I was gonna say call an attorney.
CYA, right? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So a grantor, again, the grantor is the person that gives the deed. They deed their land to a school district for so long as the school district maintains a public elementary school on the parcel. And if it ceases to do so, this estate shall end immediately. I'm not an attorney and I can't interpret everything in a deed, but that's pretty clear, right? How can I use the property? For a public elementary school. And if I do anything else, what's going to happen? It's going to end when? Immediately. This is the kind of verbiage found in the deed. Is this pretty clear? What you can use, the one use you can have? I don't know how we can make it much clearer. Do you guys? One use, you break the rules, you lose the property. This means the district has a fee simple determinable estate. If at some point the district does not maintain a public elementary school, then the title to the land goes back to the grantor or their heirs if they're no longer with us. So fee simple determinable is a restriction on use. How the owner uses the property has restrictions, deeded restrictions. Question comes in, what if there are no heirs? The state will figure out, that's right, the state will figure out what to do with it. But if you're doing a deed like this, the attorney is going to highly recommend that you, right? Because you're saying, I'm going to put it somewhere else if this doesn't work out. So let me rephrase that. A good attorney is going to recommend that you do up a will so the heirs get the property. And the heirs don't have to be your family, right? They could be your best friend's daughter or whatever, right? Is zoning considered fee simple defeasible? No, that's a good question. Zoning, we'll talk about in Unit 6. With zoning, typically you own fee simple absolute, but you got to follow the law. You got to follow the rule. So zoning dictates how you can use the property. And again, we'll get into zoning in Unit 6. Good question. So fee simple determinable, there's a restriction on use. You guys have that written down? Fee simple determinable estates have restrictions on how you use the property. Life estates have restrictions on time. You can use the property however you want to, but how long you have to use the property is restricted. So life estates have a restriction on time. And there are a couple different types of life estates. The first one is called a conventional life estate. This estate is not inheritable. What this estate says is that you can own this property for the rest of your life. And when the owner passes away, the property either comes back to the grantor or it goes on to a named third party. So how long do you own the property? For as long as you're alive. You do whatever you want to on the property. It's yours. You got to, comply with zoning and restrictive covenants, all that. You can rent the property. You can farm the property. It's yours. You do whatever you want to for as long as you're alive. When the owner dies, the estate either goes back to the grantor or their heirs, or it goes on to a named third party. I think the most important thing to know about a conventional life estate is it's not inheritable. You only have it for as long as the owner is alive.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can the life tenant sell the property?
Yes, but then they wouldn't have that estate anymore, right?
Right.
Nope, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm going to say no. Well, you could with permission of whomever's going to get it after you, right? Because it still only be good. Yeah, I'm gonna retract my answer there. You have to have it. You'd have to have a separate agreement to do that. We're kind of going to talk about that in just a second, kind of, sort of. Another type of life estate is called a marital life estate. If a spouse, if an individual purchases property and then gets married, everybody with me? You own property when you're single and then you get married. And your spouse is entitled to a certain elective share when that individual passes away. So you own property, you get married, and then they pass away. Your spouse is entitled to an elective share. How much they're going to get of the marital life estate is based on how long you were married. Please understand, this is not referring to people who are married when they buy property. We're going to talk about that on Thursday. You own property, you get married, and then that individual passes away. The spouse is entitled to some. How much? It depends on how long we were married. So we'll talk about married people buying property when we come together on Thursday. Question comes in, could you have a life estate and a determinable estate in one? Sure. So you have restriction on time and use. The other life estate we have is a life estate pour autre vie. You guys know you're going to learn some French today? Woo, we just throw everything at you. Pour autre vie means for the life of another. Pour autre vie means for the life of another. And what the pour autre vie life estate says, you have the life tenant who owns the property, who can do whatever they want to on the property while they own it. How long do they own it? We have a third party named as the measuring life. The measuring life is the yardstick to determine how long the life tenant owns the property. The measuring life doesn't have any ownership interest. They own nothing. They have no control, nothing. They're simply used to determine how long the life tenant owns the property. So back to that previous question, if you sell it, this could possibly be now you own it for as long as the new person would own it for as long as the original life tenant was alive. We could set this up as a measuring life. So again, the yardstick is a third party. There's a really good example in your book on the top of page 33. Top of page 33, it tells us that Austin owns a fee simple title. He conveys a life estate to his brother Carl for the life of Carl's daughter who has a major disability. Austin conveyed the property to Carl. When Austin conveyed it, that means he transferred the property. So Carl owns the property for how long? Forever long his daughter is alive. His daughter is the measuring life. Carl would be the life tenant. He can do whatever he wants to with the property for as long as his daughter's alive. Once the daughter passes away, Carl's estate will terminate and go back to Austin or his heirs, or go on to a named third party. The daughter in this case has no ownership rights, no ownership interest whatsoever. The daughter is simply the yardstick to determine how long Carl gets to own the property.
question.
Yeah.
So when you say like yardstick and determine how long the person keeps the property, like how does it work? Is it like age? Is it wow?
However long the measuring life is alive. If the measuring life owns the property for, or I'm sorry, if the measuring life is alive for 80 years, the life tenant owns it for 80 years.
Okay, gotcha.
It's the length of the measuring life. And when that life is over, then the estate is over. A question came in, what if Carl dies first? Well, it's an inheritable estate. So if Carl dies first, the property will go on to his heirs, and heirs is heirs, and heirs is heirs is heirs, for as long as the measuring life is alive. The length of ownership has nothing to do with the life tenant. It has everything to do with the measuring life. The person mentioned in the deed, you own the property for as long as this person's alive. Okay. Good stuff, isn't it? Once again, I say, can y'all see why I want you guys calling an attorney? My goodness, this is like first year law student stuff, right? Like, you know, so teaching you just enough to be dangerous. But seriously, guys, the whole point of that, if you're dealing with something that's not fee simple absolute, you should have little red flags going up all over the place. Your clients need to call an attorney to make sure that these estates are handled properly. When we talked about life estates, I've mentioned going back to the grantor or onto a named third party. Both of those have actual terms. If it's going to the named third party, it's referred to as a remainder estate. The remainder man is the third party, and this individual is listed in the deed. At the end of this estate, it's going to go on to third party. If at the end of the life estate, it goes back to the grantor, it's a reversionary. So when you see reversionary, see the word reverse. It reverses back to the grantor or their heirs if the grantor is no longer with us. And if there's no remainder man named, then the reversionary interest is the default. So if the deed doesn't specify a remainder man, so it either goes on to a named third party, the remainder man, or reverses back to the grantor or their heirs.
Question. The remainder interest, is it something like survivorship?
No. I have a property and I say, you know, when the measuring life dies, Miss Howard gets it. You're the remainder man. You're just standing next in line.
Okay. Thank you.
So it either comes back to me or it goes on to somebody that I mentioned in the deed.
Or the state?
Again, we have attorneys involved, so hopefully we have wills that spell out what's going to happen, right? That a good attorney is going to say, wow, before you set up a restriction on time, let's get you a will. You with me? So there's no question about what happens. And you heard me when I say good attorney. Are all attorneys good? Some are better than others, we're going to say. How about we leave it at that? Some are better than others, as goes with any industry. Every single industry, real estate, every industry, some people are better than others at what they do. So with the life estate, we've mentioned the life tenant. The life tenant owns the property either for their life or the life of another. And there's certain rights that the life tenant has. Remember, they own the property. Their only restriction is on time. So while they own the property, they can earn profit, income, Again, you want to harvest, you want to plant crops and sell those crops. You want to rent it to a tenant. They can utilize the resources on the property. They don't have to answer to anybody as long as they're not destroying the property. That's one caveat. They can't destroy the property because somebody is next in line for it. And because they own it, they get to pay taxes and special assessments and homeowners insurance and repairs and maintenance. And it's just like owning a property. The only difference is for how long. As we said, the one thing they can't do is waste. They can't destroy the property on purpose, of course. I think your book gives an example about an orchard on the property, and the life tenant doesn't want to care for the orchard, so they just let it go. The remainder man or the reversionary would have the right to take the life tenant to court. If you're destroying, as the life tenant, if you're destroying a property, again, somebody else is waiting in line for it. And the last thing we're going to say today, just to get a really good stopping place. So I got two more things today, so don't go anywhere just yet. Stay with me. In your book, the last thing we're just going to mention is something called a homestead. Have a very basic, like what you see on the screen is what you may. It's in a life estate that's occupied as the family home. Those that qualify for a homestead might be protected from creditors. Now they're still got to pay taxes. They still have to pay their mortgage. But if you qualify for a homestead, you could have tax advantages, tax benefits. This is a CYA and CYA. Not only are you going to call your attorney, but you're also going to call your accountant. Anytime there's possible tax advantages. So homestead, that's about all we need to know about that. So before we go, let's just kind of, I'm going to stop sharing. Let's talk kind of about what Thursday is going to look like. So we all know where we are. We're going to pick up on Thursday. We're going to talk about ownership of real property. If you've not looked at Unit 2 yet, please finish looking ahead at Unit 2. Again, some concepts in the rest of Unit 2 that if it's the first time you're hearing it, it's going to be confusing. It's going to be hard for you to wrap your brain around. So please look ahead at Unit 2. After Unit 2, we're going to do a little math introduction, try to get you guys warmed up. And then on Thursday, we're going to start you guys in on Unit 3. So when you're looking ahead, remember your homework is always review where we've been. So Unit 1, whatever, don't worry about Unit 1. Cover what we've reviewed in Unit 2, go through that material, and then look ahead to the rest of Unit 2 and Unit 3. The end of Unit 3 is when we get into our first real math. So we get to do some math with property taxation. Again, you can look ahead. Please remember to get logged on, to get yourself set up for Learn Test Pass, in Learn Test Pass. That email that you guys have from Lane has the instructions that you need to get into Learn Test Pass. Please remember to go calculator shopping. Get yourself a basic calculator so we can start doing math on Tuesday or Thursday, whenever we meet next. Also, don't forget to send me your introduction. You can email me or text me. I want a selfie with you and your textbook and introduction. I will respond to you. If I receive it, I will respond to you. Just be patient with me. There's like 48 of you and one of me. So just be patient with me. I will get back to you. I think that's all I have to say for today. I've said a lot today. Guess what, guys? This is just day one. At some point in this class, you're going to go, oh my goodness, this is hard. I know a lot of you just met me and you're still trying to sit there and determine if you can trust me or not. So I understand I'm kind of asking you to take a leap of faith and hear me when I say this stuff is tough. This is a hard class. These are hard exams. I need you pinky swore me, remember? I need you guys to commit. I need you to start today because we only go forward from here. We very rarely have time to go back. If we want to cover everything, we always point forward. And that's why you guys have the assignment of reflecting, reviewing where we've been, making sure you're fine tuning that as we go along. Fair enough? I'm trying to be very transparent with you guys. This stuff is hard.
Okay. On that note, on that note, I wanted to know if it'd be okay if I'm going to put my email address in the chat window. I'm a big collaborator and I love little study groups. And I think that I may hear something better or differently than you do.
Absolutely.
Math. So I'm going to put my contact information in there. And if anybody would like to, be a study buddy or come into a group,
Awesome.
I would
Thank
be
you,
open
Stephanie.
to that.
And I'll
So-
leave the call open. If you guys want to chit chat, I'll leave the call open in just a second. I'll go away because it's lunchtime too. So I'll go away if you guys want to chit chat and talk about how to study. I'm a fan of study groups as long as you got to have somebody to keep you on point. When you spend all your study time socializing, you've lost focus of what a study group is about. So that's the only caveat to study groups that I've seen in the past when they don't work. It's social hour. So you got a couple emails coming in right now. So with that being said, it's 1 o'clock. I'm going to stop recording. If you want to hang around